Chapter 2878, Ancient Rock City's Secret Fire Dragon Empire, Flame Dragon City, Mythology's Residence. A Tier 3 ranger barged into the meeting room occupied by Mythology's executives, earning the dissatisfaction of Situ Qingtian and the others in the room. Looking at the ranger, Situ Qingtian asked in a displeased tone, "Did something happen?" "It's news of Zero Wing," the ranger said hurriedly. "According to your orders, we've kept tabs on Zero Wing. However, just a moment ago Zero Wing destroyed Ancient Rock City." Upon hearing the ranger's words, Cold Shadow responded dubiously, "Impossible. It's only been around 10 minutes since Zero Wing arrived at Ancient Rock City. Even if Black Flame is Tier 5, they can't possibly capture the city so quickly." Ancient Rock City was Beast Emperor's base, and the man had long since armed the city to the teeth. Beast Emperor also had the evil god's temple's backing, a powerful existence capable of going against the war god's temple. Although Feng was a Tier 5 player, capturing Ancient Rock City should be tough. No. Vice Guild Leader, Zero Wing didn't capture Ancient Rock City. It razed the entire city in one blow. Ancient Rock City is now a ruin. The ranger countered, shaking his head. He then took out a magic crystal recorder and placed it on the meeting table. "This is the battle video we received." Immediately, the magic crystal recorder projected the image of a dragon. With just one breath attack, this dragon leveled the entire Ancient Rock City, leaving nothing unscathed. A Tier 4 divine dragon. It managed to destroy the entire Ancient Rock City in one hit? Deathly silence enveloped the meeting room momentarily as Mythology's executives stared at the video projection with gloomy expressions. Shock and fear also surfaced in their eyes. Their astonishment was so obvious that even the reporting Tier 3 ranger could sense it. No wonder he dared refuse our two guilds' partnership. So this is the reason for his confidence. Cold Shadow looked at the Tier 4 divine dragon and the ruined Ancient Rock City in the video with complicated feelings. Feng had been a minor character unworthy of her attention in the past when Zero Wing was a guild reliant on external items to defend its territories. Yet both Feng and Zero Wing were now bona fide titans that even Mythology could not and would not dare to offend. What was even more laughable was that just a moment ago, Mythology's executives had been discussing how to take revenge on Zero Wing in secret. Now, however, Black Flame, I indeed underestimated you before. Situ Qingtian's gaze grew cold as he looked at the video projection. Repressing the reluctance in his heart, he uttered slowly, "Temporarily halt all retaliation against Zero Wing we discussed before." Practically every superpower in God's domain had heard about Feng killing Situ Qingtian in Zero Wing City. As a result, Situ Qingtian's reputation had taken a nosedive. Although Situ Qingtian yearned to take revenge on Zero Wing, he knew full well that doing so right now would be no different from suicide. With the combined strength of a Tier 5 player and such a frightening divine dragon, Zero Wing could destroy every guild city in God's domain. "Damn it. Are we going to let Zero Wing go just like that?" A Mythology executive complained in a hate-filled voice. Situ Qingtian shook his head. Looking at Feng's projected image, he sneered, "Of course not. There is only one thing we need to do now, and that is wait. We wait until the start of the Second War. Even if Zero Wing has Black Flame and that divine dragon, it still can't stop the Outer World's advance. Also, start searching ancient ruins for clues to the Tier 5 promotion. Spare no cost at all. We must have our own Tier 5. Although Situ Qingtian did not wish to admit it, the era of Tier 4 was already over. Tier 5 players would rule the future. If Mythology did not have its own Tier 5 player, its position as one of the 5 great super guilds would be in danger. Shortly after Situ Qingtian issued his command, the other superpowers of God's domain also issued similar commands. They frantically searched ancient ruins for clues to help their Tier 4 experts get promoted to Tier 5 as quickly as possible while quietly awaiting the arrival of the Second War of Worlds. Meanwhile, inside the Orc Empire's Ancient Rock City, Fire Dance and the other Tier 4 experts of Zero Wing finally killed the 2 surviving foe Saint Slayers. The deaths of the 2 superior mythic monsters granted everyone a generous amount of EXP, and they all managed to gain at least 1 level. However, compared to the EXP the foe Saint Slayers contributed, Feng was more interested in the pitch-black stones the 2 monsters dropped after death. Previously, whenever players killed mythic-ranked foe Saint monsters, the player who landed the finishing blow would have a dark gray mist invade their body. This gray mist would increase the player's affinity with mana for a lengthy period. This was also why Feng had not taken action against the foe Saint Slayers and had instead allowed Fire Dance and the others to kill the two monsters. Yet the two Slayers did not release any mist from their bodies. Instead they each dropped a fist-sized stone. What dense soul energy! Feng was surprised when he spread his senses across the two black stones. When his concentration had reached Tier 5, his soul had also undergone a qualitative improvement. It was akin to his soul liquefying. However, compared to the soul energy in the pitch-black stone, his soul energy was nothing. After all, these two stones were solidified soul energy. Guild leader, are those things useful? Kola asked curiously as he looked at the black stones in Feng's hands. More than that. Smiling, Feng said to Zero Wings members, they're even better than fragmented legendary items. Is there anyone here with concentration at the Tier 4 peak standard? After Zero Wings members exchanged glances, only Violet Cloud stepped forward. Guild leader, my concentration reached the Tier 4 peak standard recently. However, the two vice guild leaders should have reached this standard too. Good. Take this soul stone. Afterward, find a quiet place and eat it. It should increase your concentration standard. If you're lucky, you might even raise it to Tier 5, Feng said as he handed one of the black stones to Violet Cloud. He then said to the others, if anyone else manages to reach the Tier 4 peak standard, you can get this soul stone from me. The other Zero Wing members nodded their heads, none of them objecting to Feng's method of distribution. However, when Beast Emperor, who was restrained in a corner, saw Feng's actions, he dearly wanted to strangle Feng to death. Feng was actually treating the two foe Saint Slayers' cores as a snack and letting others eat them. This was simply outrageous. He had fed the two foe Saint Slayers the souls of tens of thousands of Tier 3 players to transform their cores into a soul core. So long as he had a soul core, he could create another foe Saint Slayer. Yet Violet Cloud received one of these soul cores as a snack. Black Flame. You'll pay for this. Beast Emperor bellowed as he glared at Feng. It doesn't matter even if you caught me. The evil god's temple's rise is already a foregone conclusion. At that time, the foe saint army will devour everyone from Zero Wing. Foregone conclusion? Feng laughed. Looking at the restrained Beast Emperor, he pointed at the ruined saint's hand residence in the distance and asked, are you talking about that secret land beneath your guild residence? I don't know what you're talking about. Beast Emperor stammered in a panic. No need to pretend. Do you think Tier 5 is a joke? Feng rolled his eyes at Beast Emperor. While Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array was still active, Feng hadn't been able to sense the secret land's existence. However, with the defensive magic array gone, nothing in Ancient Rock City could hide from his Tier 5 world creation mana domain. Moreover, Feng had already been suspicious about how Beast Emperor had managed to develop Ancient Rock City to its current level. Zero Wing had poured an astronomical amount of resources into developing Stone Forest City and Zero Wing City. Yet the two cities were still stuck as intermediate cities, far from becoming advanced cities. So, how did Ancient Rock City develop into an advanced city that was close to becoming a main city? Only a fool wouldn't suspect there was a secret behind this achievement. Black Flame. Beast Emperor was momentarily enraged at Feng's ridicule. However, he soon calmed down and said, so what if you've discovered the evil god's secret land? Do you think you can defend it? Even if you've captured me, I will still spread this information to the entire god's domain. At that time, even the outer world forces will be drawn here. Do you think you can stop all of them? The evil god's secret land was originally his biggest secret and something he had invested heavily in. This secret land was also why he had gained his current power. Although the evil god's secret land would be of significantly less help to those not belonging to the evil god's temple, the benefits were still enough to drive everyone in God's domain wild. How would I know if I don't try? Suddenly, Feng executed a slash at Furious Fist, instantly killing him. As Furious Fist collapsed reluctantly to the ground and transformed into countless particles of light, two items appeared in his place. Of the two items Furious Fist dropped, one was a piece of epic equipment while the other was a token. Beast Emperor's complexion paled when he saw the token. This token was none other than Ancient Rock City's City Lord's token. With this token one could take control of ancient Rock City. Only, Beast Emperor couldn't figure out how Feng knew Furious Fist had held the City Lord's token. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Ooh, it seems my luck is good. Feng was a little surprised when he saw the City Lord's token. It dropped on the first kill. Beast Emperor nearly fainted when he heard Feng's words. What Beast Emperor didn't know was that aside from Beast Emperor, everyone else held no value as prisoners in Feng's opinion. Meanwhile, the City Lord's token couldn't be taken out of the city. Otherwise, it would be automatically teleported back to the City Lord's mansion after some time. And with how precious the City Lord's token was, Beast Emperor naturally wouldn't leave it to just anyone. The person holding the token would have to be a Tier 4 guild executive of Saint's Hand at the very least. Hence, if Furious Fist hadn't dropped the City Lord's token, Feng would have killed Saint's Hand's Tier 4 experts one by one until it dropped. The instant Feng picked up the City Lord's token, a system notification rang in his ears. Chapter 2879, Colossal Wealth System. Congratulations. You have obtained Ancient Rock City's City Lord's token. Do you wish to bind the token? Once bound, you will become Ancient Rock City's ruler and obtain full authority over the city. Feng chose to bind the token without hesitation. System, binding in progress. You will have full authority over Ancient Rock City after 4 hours. You should not move beyond 1,000 yards from the city during these 4 hours. If you leave this area or get killed during this time, the binding process will be cancelled, and you may not make another binding attempt for 1 natural day. PS 4 hours? Feng was a little surprised by the notification. Has it reached the main city standard already? When one tried to bind the City Lord's token of a guild city, the binding time would depend on the city's rank. Main city-level guild cities normally took 4 to 6 hours to bind. Guild leader, did something happen? Fire Dance asked when she saw Feng's strange expression. It's nothing. I just didn't expect Ancient Rock City to be this special, Feng said, glancing at the raging Beast Emperor. Smiling, he continued, since we have to wait for 4 hours, let's pay that evil god's secret land a visit. Black Flame, don't get too delighted just yet. It's useless even if you've obtained Ancient Rock City. That secret land isn't a place you can touch. Without my means of entering, you can't obtain anything inside that secret land. Beast Emperor sneered. I'll spread the secret land's entry methods to all your enemies and even those outer world people. At that time, you can only watch as they take all of the secret land's treasures right before your eyes. Zero Wing could indeed better defend itself after acquiring Ancient Rock City. However, Beast Emperor also knew very well that the Outer World forces had already deemed Zero Wing an eyesore. Once the Outer World's army arrived, neither Starmoon Kingdom nor the Orc Empire would survive. At that time, the Outer World forces would snatch the evil god's secret land from Feng, and Feng would be helpless to resist them. However, Feng ignored Beast Emperor and led Zero Wing's members to Saint's Hand's residence. Although Ancient Rock City was now in ruins and Saint's Hand's residence had been leveled, the guild warehouse was situated on the first underground floor, so Saint's Hand's guild warehouse remained intact. After Feng's group took care of the one Tier 4 NPC and several Tier 3 NPCs guarding the warehouse, they gained full access to it. Everyone from Zero Wing salivated when they stepped into Saint's Hand's guild warehouse. The warehouse, which was the size of 2 sports stadiums, was packed with all sorts of items. Gold coins covered the floor and magic crystals formed numerous mounds. At a glance, they estimated it held at least 3 million gold coins and 4 million magic crystals. This stockpile of magic crystals was only slightly inferior to Zero Wing's. We're rich. Guild leader, we're rich. Fire Dance exclaimed in excitement as she looked around the warehouse. With all these coins and magic crystals, we won't have to worry about upgrading the buildings of our cities anymore. Zero Wing City's public opening had indeed generated a lot of additional income. Unfortunately, the guild's expenditure still exceeded that amount. This was because Zero Wing City's public opening necessitated an increase in the city's security. The city had to recruit many NPC soldiers to fill as many of the 30,000 slots as possible. While Zero Wing could skim on the benefits provided to the hired soldiers by virtue of Zero Wing City being a main city, the cost of employing level 150 plus, Tier 3 NPCs was still high. With everything taken into account, Maintaining a Tier 3 NPC cost 5 gold coins. If Zero Wing City filled all 30,000 of its soldier slots with Tier 3 NPCs, the NPC soldiers' daily upkeep alone would total 150,000 gold. Moreover, this still did not include the NPCs' weapons and equipment or the maintenance cost for the Tier 4 NPCs hired. Simply put, Zero Wing's daily expenditure had skyrocketed after Zero Wing City's public opening. At this time, the guild's stockpile of coins was close to empty. Fortunately, thanks to Saint's Hand's contribution, Zero Wing's warehouse would soon be rich again. Seeing Fire Dance's joy, Feng chose to hide the fact that Ancient Rock City's reconstruction would probably eat up all of this money. Zero Wing might even need to provide additional funds. Guild leader, come here quick. There are 7 luminaries crystals here. Blackie said after opening a chest as tall as he was. With glittering eyes, he continued, there are at least 50,000 units here. That's even more than what we have. Before Feng left for the Western continent, he had tasked Blackie with acquiring as many 7 luminaries crystals as possible. Hence, Blackie placed particular importance on the crystals. However, Zero Wing's warehouse currently had only around 30,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal despite his efforts. And if it weren't for Zero Wing having a monopoly over the Arctic Canyon, this amount would be even lower. Yet Saint's Hand's warehouse had more than 50,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal. That's nothing. Blackie, come over to my spot. I'll let you know what real wealth is. Shouted Cola, who stood in another corner of the warehouse as he pointed at the several hill-sized chests beside him. All of these chests here are full of epic materials or above. From what I can tell, there are at least 300,000 epic materials, 20,000 inferior legendary materials, and 3,000 legendary materials. Everyone, including Feng, was stunned when they heard Cola's words. This was on the level of a kingdom's treasury. Ordinary kingdoms might not even reach this standard. Only high-ranking kingdoms would have so many rare materials. However, upon hearing Cola's words, Beast Emperor, who had been dragged along to the warehouse, turned livid, his eyes becoming bloodshot. He had accumulated these materials by ransacking multiple kingdoms with the Faux Saint army and destroying numerous NPC cities. Yet all his efforts had ended up benefiting Zero Wing. Afterward, Feng tasked Blackie with sweeping through the warehouse and transporting everything back to the guild warehouse in Zero Wing City. He then brought Fire Dance and the others to a secret room on the 2nd underground floor. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The secret room was only the size of a basketball court, with a pitch-black door in the middle of it. Upon entering the room, Fire Dance and the others felt an incomparably powerful pressure enveloping their bodies. Fire Dance had unlocked her mana body beyond the 110% completion rate already, yet even she had difficulty walking inside the secret room. After 3 steps, the pressure was so strong that she couldn't move her body. If an ordinary Tier 4 player were to enter this room, they would most likely crumple to the floor, unable to advance even a single step. Haha. I already said that you people would never be able to touch the evil god's secret land. Beast Emperor laughed when he saw Fire Dance and the others immobilized. He then looked at Feng and taunted, Black Flame, it's the same even if you're Tier 5. Without my special method, none of you should think of entering. Beast Emperor had reached the peak of Tier 4 already. He also had the benefit of being an evil god worshipper. Nevertheless, he still struggled to enter the evil god's secret land. This was why Beast Emperor was confident that Feng would be helpless against the evil god's secret land even though he had discovered its existence. Is that so? Feng stepped into the secret room after glancing at the laughing Beast Emperor. Chapter 2880, God Mode Secret Land. What bold words. I want to see just how far you can go. Beast Emperor watched with ridicule and complacency as Feng entered the secret room. He was fully confident that the evil god's secret land would repel Feng. However, after Feng entered the room, 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, apparently unhindered by the oppression the pitch-black door exerted, Feng advanced 20 steps without stopping. He showed no signs of discomfort whatsoever. It was as if the pressure that rendered even experts at the peak of Tier 4 helpless was nothing to him. Confusion flooded Beast Emperor's heart as he looked at Feng. What's going on? When Feng arrived before the pitch-black door, let alone Beast Emperor, even Fire Dance and the others were stunned. How did you do it, guild leader? Fire Dance asked, unable to contain her curiosity. The intensity of the pressure she felt from the secret room was unprecedented. Even the divine might she experienced in Lightforged City could not compare. After taking 3 steps into the room, she could no longer advance by even another inch. She couldn't even lift her feet. While Tier 5 players were indeed stronger than Tier 4 players, the disparity shouldn't be so significant. Logically, there was no way Feng would remain unaffected by the room's oppression. At Fire Dance's question, the other Zero Wing members also looked at Feng curiously. How did I do it? Seeing everyone's curious expressions, Feng smiled faintly and said, I just walked here, of course. However, I did use a little technique. Technique. The Zero Wing members were momentarily stunned. They hadn't seen anything peculiar about Feng's gait. He had merely walked to the door in a normal fashion. Moreover, how could a technique completely mitigate such terrifying pressure? However, when Beast Emperor heard Feng's words, he stared at the latter as if he had just seen a ghost. No. Impossible. Who are you? How can you know such a technique? There was indeed a trick to approaching the pitch-black door. However, Beast Emperor had never told anyone this trick. He was the only player in God's domain who knew it. Moreover, even if one knew the trick, one still couldn't approach the door without the evil god's blessing. Feng couldn't help rolling his eyes at Beast Emperor. The technique required to approach this door is indeed complicated, but do you think the fundamental technique to manipulate the various elements of mana is unique to the evil god's temple? When Feng saw the pitch-black door and the hurdle Fire Dance and the others faced after entering the secret room, he quickly noticed a similarity between the secret room and the Dragon Temple's trial area. In the Dragon Temple's trial, players had to construct a bridge using mana's various elements. The secret room, on the other hand, was filled with chaotic mana. The closer to the pitch-black door, the more chaotic the ambient mana was. What players needed to do was return this chaotic mana to its original state. Only by doing so could players approach the door. Simply put, both places tested players' usage of the various elements of mana. For Feng, who had already mastered the basic usage of the various elements of mana, approaching the pitch-black door was a walk in the park. It was much easier than the trial in the Dragon Temple, which had required him to expend a lot of concentration and manipulate a significant amount of mana. The secret room, on the other hand, did not put a burden on his concentration or require him to manipulate a lot of mana. The secret land aside, this room is quite a good training spot for those seeking to learn the basic usage of the various elements of mana. Scrutinizing the secret room, Feng said happily, I was worrying about how to help everyone accomplish this, so this saves me a lot of time. It wasn't easy to learn to manipulate the various elements of mana independently. Even if he provided Zero Wings members with an explanation, the learning process would be highly inefficient without a reference. They could be taking a dead end for all they knew. The secret room just so happened to provide players with an environment for testing their application of the various elements of mana. It was undoubtedly a precious training ground. One would also have an easier time getting promoted to Tier 5 if they trained here, as having the ability to manipulate the individual elements of mana was crucial in constructing a Tier 5 mana body. When Beast Emperor heard Feng's words, he promptly fainted. Ignoring the unconscious Beast Emperor, Feng set his sights on the pitch-black door. The door was 5 meters tall and 2 meters wide, made of a material Feng didn't recognize. When he opened the door, a pitch-black whirlpool greeted him. The vortex exuded divine might, and players at Tier 4 or below shouldn't even think of setting foot into this whirlpool. After Feng inspected the whirlpool with omniscient eyes, a few lines of information appeared before him. Evil God's Secret Land. God Mode Secret Land Raid Level 150 to 200. What a powerful secret land. The displayed information astonished Feng. Now he understood why Beast Emperor was confident he couldn't obtain the Evil God's Secret Land. Secret lands were like dungeons in God's domain. The higher their ranking, the higher their raid difficulty. God Mode was the highest difficulty for secret lands. Unlike dungeons, though, secret lands would not reset. According to Feng's memories, there were less than 10 level 150 plus God Mode secret lands in the entire God's domain. Meanwhile, even Tier 6 God-ranked experts could fall in a level 150 plus God Mode secret land. However, countless player forces would seek to enter a level 150 plus God Mode secret land. It was also a place all Tier 5 players had to enter. This was because these secret lands held clues to the Tier 6 promotion. Which player who had climbed to Tier 5 wouldn't wish to advance further and reach Tier 6? Hence, God's Domain's various forces would fight over any level 150+ God mode secret land that appeared. It seems I'll now have to defend ancient Rock City no matter what. Feng sighed as he looked at the evil god's secret land. Due to the Outer World Forces invasion, he had intended to defend ancient Rock City only temporarily. After all, Zero Wing had limited combat power. In its current state, just defending the guild cities it already had from the Outer Worlds player and NPC forces would be difficult. Adding ancient Rock City to the list would only make things even more difficult for the guild. However, the evil god's secret land was extraordinary. Feng might have ignored it if it were only an Azura mode secret land, but a level 150+ God mode secret land was something he had to protect at all costs. After all, finding another secret land of such caliber wouldn't be easy even for him. The entrances of level 150+ God mode secret lands typically appeared at random locations and existed for only a set period. Thus, none of the superpowers in his previous life had ever managed to occupy a level 150+ God mode secret land. On the other hand, the entrance to the evil god's secret land in ancient Rock City was fixed. This increased the entrance's value drastically. Moreover, this evil god's secret land might very well hold the key to Feng's promotion to Tier 6. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Following this, Zero Wing's logistics members began ransacking Saint's Hands warehouse, while Feng taught Fire Dance and the others the fundamental technique to manipulate mana's various elements. Like so, 4 hours went by in the blink of an eye, and Feng received a notification. System, congratulations. You have become Ancient Rock City's ruler. Do you wish to reconstruct Ancient Rock City? Reconstruct. Feng said in a determined tone. System, a God mode secret land has been discovered. Do you wish to integrate the secret land with Ancient Rock City? Chapter 2881. Integration Integrate. Feng grew confused as he read the system notification. This was the first time he had heard of a secret land being integrated with a guild city. He had seen many player forces constructing guild cities on top of precious secret lands in the past. However, even as these guild cities developed, they never received any opportunity to merge with these secret lands directly. For a moment, Feng hesitated. The evil god's secret land was a level 150+ God mode secret land. If he recklessly merged it with Ancient Rock City and the secret land disappeared, he would suffer a huge loss. However, before Feng could ponder things further, he received another system notification. System. It is detected that you have 3 million magic crystals and 5,007 luminaries crystals on your person. You have fulfilled the conditions to reconstruct Ancient Rock City with the evil god's secret land as the core. Do you wish to integrate the secret land and upgrade the city? Agree. Feng agreed without hesitation when he heard the contents of the notification. There were several holy cities in God's domain, and one of these holy cities had a God mode secret land as its core. The War God's Temple had also established its main headquarters in this holy city. Sanctuary. This sacred place was also why all Tier 5 experts sought to visit the top of the world. Sanctuary was the sole ancient city in God's domain that players had verified to hold clues to the Tier 6 promotion. The city was so old that nobody could ascertain its age in this modern day. Rumor had it that any Tier 4 player that entered Sanctuary had a 100% chance of getting promoted to Tier 5. However, what made Sanctuary amazing wasn't the knowledge it stored. Instead, the holy city held complete control over a level 150+ God mode secret land. Players that gained sufficient authority in the city, even Tier 3 players, could enter the secret land. It was different from the God mode secret lands found in the outside world, where the minimum entry requirement was Tier 4 because of the suppression of divine might. Although great dangers existed in a God mode secret land, they weren't everywhere. Moreover, the environment inside level 150+ God mode secret lands was different from the outside world, resembling that of ancient times, the era abounding with gods. Hence, entering a God mode secret land was an excellent opportunity even for low-tier players. Now that Ancient Rock City could become another sanctuary, how could Feng possibly turn down this opportunity? After Feng voiced his approval, Some of the magic crystals and 7 luminaries crystals he had acquired from Xianxia's warehouse vanished from his bag space. Simultaneously, Ancient Rock City shook briefly. Ancient Rock City Region System Announcement. Ancient Rock City will commence with an upgrade. All players within Ancient Rock City will be teleported out of the city in 10 minutes. Players within the city are advised to make the necessary preparations. The system announcement echoed 3 times throughout the region. Subsequently, Feng received a personal system notification. System: Ancient Rock City's upgrade is estimated to take 1 natural day. As you hold Ancient Rock City's City Lord's token, you may not move more than 3,000 yards away from the city. You can also choose to log off and rest. Why is it so long? Feng was rendered speechless by the notification. A guild city's upgrade would typically take only several hours. Nevertheless, Ancient Rock City needed 1 day for its advancement. By the time the city was ready, Beast Emperor would have long since spread the evil god's secret lands information to all of God's domain. And worse, Ancient Rock City would be at its weakest after the reconstruction and upgrade process. Before the system's first major update, guild cities got a grace period whenever they underwent an upgrade. Now, guild cities no longer received that benefit. Players had to defend their cities on their own. If the outer world forces were determined, Ancient Rock City might be greeted with a battle as soon as its reconstruction ended. At this time, Fire Dance looked toward Feng and asked, "Guild leader, we've emptied Xianxia's warehouse already. Should we retreat now?" "No, bring Beast Emperor and the other captives back to Silverwing City first," Feng replied, shaking his head. "Also, have Liang Jing gather the necessary manpower in Silverwing City ahead of time. As soon as Ancient Rock City opens, have them garrison the city immediately." "Yes, sir." Upon hearing Feng's words, Fire Dance understood that trouble would accompany Ancient Rock City's promotion. There might even be a big battle awaiting the city. She immediately set out to execute his orders. After Fire Dance left Ancient Rock City, Feng chose to log off and rest. He had been busy with various tasks previously, so he hadn't had a chance to take a break from the game. Now that the system had prohibited him from leaving Ancient Rock City's vicinity, he could use this opportunity to rest up. Yuantian City's upper zone, 6th Southern District. The fearless cabin's hatch opened slowly and Feng climbed out of the gaming cabin. The instant Feng exited the cabin, dizziness assaulted him. He very nearly fell back into the cabin. What's going on? As the world spun before him, Feng felt an indescribable hunger. Confused, he wondered, are my mind and body failing to adapt because I spent too much time in the Dragon Temple? However, Feng dared not ponder on this matter for too long because he knew there was only one thing he needed to do right now: eat. He had experienced this hunger once before, so he knew that his anemic symptoms resulted from his body lacking energy. Fortunately, Feng had prepared for such situations. After Zero Wing partnered with the Boulder Corporation, the latter had given Zero Wing 30 bottles of life potion. Feng had distributed most of them to Zero Wing's executives but kept 5 for himself as a precaution. This situation was precisely when he needed to use those life potions. Feng emptied 2 bottles of life potion in the blink of an eye. However, although the anemic symptoms he suffered eased, his mind and body still lacked energy. Only after downing the 5th bottle did Feng feel himself reviving. "Thank goodness I prepared 5 bottles. I wouldn't have recovered from this predicament with only 4. Feng couldn't help sighing deeply as he looked at the empty bottles in front of him. These 5 bottles of life potion should have lasted him 2 months. Now he had finished all 5 in one fell swoop. If Mushin and Krue found out about this, they would have a heart attack. After all, this was half a year's worth of provisions for them. However, while Feng felt heartache over the consumption, he also felt completely reinvigorated. His physical fitness, mental strength, perception, and physical aspects had undergone tremendous growth. Now, even with both eyes closed, he could still perceive the outline of his room. He could even sense the life force of those in the entire building block if he concentrated. This was simply unbelievable. Could I have become a mental strength master already? This thought occurred to Feng when he detected the life force of others in the building. He couldn't think of any other explanation for this change. Only the rumored mental strength masters might have such an ability. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. At this time, even his view of the world had changed. After Feng immersed himself in this experience for a dozen minutes, he smiled. Although I don't know if I've become a mental strength master or not with my current standard, I shouldn't have to worry about the mental strength master backing Lu Tiandi. Thinking up to this point, Feng tidied up himself and left his house. He planned to visit the 5 States Corporation's mansion to replenish the resources necessary for both his and Zero Wing's development. Previously he had been worried about Lu Tiandi's mentor targeting him, so he hadn't dared to venture too far from his residential area. Now that his strength had improved significantly, he naturally didn't have to hold back anymore. He could do his tasks without worry. Chapter 2882 Upper Zone Transaction. When Feng exited his home and looked at the surrounding streets and buildings, a faint smile appeared on his face. How generous. He actually sent over a dozen half-step grandmasters to keep an eye on me. He had been living in the upper zone for quite some time now. After getting more information from Wuxia, he more or less understood the general situation in the upper zone. While master-level experts could be found everywhere, experts at the half-step grandmaster level were even in the upper zone. They were the mainstays of the various upper zone organizations. Normally, only the direct successors of a corporation would qualify to have an expert of such caliber accompany them. Typically, only a first-rate corporation operating in the upper zone would have more than a dozen half-step grandmasters under its command. However, Feng did not pay much attention to the experts trailing him. Behaving as if he never noticed them, he made his way toward the mansion area with a smile. Butler that kid clearly noticed us, yet he doesn't seem to care about us for some reason. A black-clad, middle-aged man standing on the rooftop of an apartment said as he looked at Feng's departing back. He then turned to Yi, who stood beside him, and asked, "Does he have some kind of backing?" The Infinity Master Fu Jiezhong had been thoroughly enraged when he learned of his student Wang Xuanming's expulsion from the upper zone. Afterward, he had requested the elders of the several families in his debt to keep an eye on Feng. And if the opportunity presented itself, they were to get rid of Feng. Naturally, the elders of the requested families were more than willing to sell Fu Jiezhong this favor. After all, according to their investigations, Feng had no background. He had managed to get into the upper zone only because of the Boulder Corporation's Hong Xingyuan. The only noteworthy thing about him was some achievements in God's domain. In response to the black-clad man's question, Yi shook his head and said, "From what I know, apart from the Boulder Corporation, his only other connection in the upper zone is General Manager Xia. However, her interest in him hasn't reached a level where she is willing to make an enemy of us for his sake. He might be ignoring us now because of the strengthened security around him." "If that's the case, this kid's days are numbered," the middle-aged man said as he looked coldly at Feng's distant figure. In a duel between 2 grandmasters, it would indeed be difficult to decide the match's outcome within a short time. However, their side had 6 half-step Honglian grandmasters and 8 grandmasters. 3 of the 8 grandmasters were even bona fide Honglian grandmasters. If they worked together, even an expert like Wang Xianming would fall quickly and have no opportunity to escape. "In that case, I'll leave the rest to you all, Elder Qi. I will wait here for your good news," Yi said respectfully to the black-clad middle-aged man. Elder Qi was the elder of a first-rate corporation. Although he could no longer improve due to his old age, he was still a Honglian grandmaster. His strength even surpassed Wang Xuanming's slightly. If not for Fu Jiezhong, Elder Qi wouldn't have paid any attention to the Starline Corporation whatsoever. "No problem. Leave it to us. Once we get an opportunity, we'll cripple him," Elder Qi said as he stroked his beard. "We'll teach this kid that he can't offend just anyone he wants in the upper zone." The upper zone was indeed a safe place, as even mental strength masters wouldn't dare take a life here. Otherwise, the Green God Company would investigate the matter. Even a mental strength master shouldn't think of continuing their days in the upper zone at that time because this was the Green God Company's bottom line. However, teaching someone a lesson or crippling them was a different story. If the Green God Company did not catch the culprit red-handed, it would turn a blind eye to the matter. After all, so long as a person was alive, the Green God Company could let them make a full recovery within a short time with their technology. After saying so, Elder Qi began tailing Feng together with the other experts. Upper Zone Mansion District. After strolling in the Mansion District for half an hour, Feng arrived in front of a 3-story mansion that occupied an area equivalent to 4 basketball courts. As expected of the 5 States Corporation, there are only 10 such mansions in this district. Even the Boulder Corporation didn't manage to get one. No wonder Han Yifeng dares to compete for one of the middle layer slots. Feng couldn't help his surprise as he inspected the luxurious mansion before him. He had seen the pricing for such large mansions. Not only did it cost 140 million trade points, but one also had to have 100 million contribution points. While one wouldn't be required to spend the 100 million contribution points, accumulating that many points was an incredibly difficult task. Meanwhile, such large mansions were much better than the average mansion. Apart from offering more space, these mansions also stood closer to the waist of the mountain. In the base layer they were the closest buildings to the middle layer. Hence, the mysterious energy filling the environment here was much denser than in other places. After Feng took a deep breath here, his mind already felt refreshed. He felt as if he had set foot into paradise on earth. Shortly after Feng pressed the doorbell, the tightly shut metal gate opened and a person walked out. This person was none other than Zhou Xian, Han Yifeng's butler. Looking at Feng, Zhou Xian asked, "Mr. Shi, may I know what business you have with us today?" "It's about the agreement young Master Han and I made," Feng replied calmly. "As per our agreement, I have come to do business with young Master Han." "Business? Please follow me." Zhou Xian nodded and led Feng into the mansion. When Feng entered the mansion, he immediately noticed several young men and women training under an elderly man in the mansion's outdoor training ground. The elderly man wore a martial arts robe. Although he had a head of white hair, the aura he exuded was more powerful than what Feng had sensed from Wang Xianming previously. Upon Feng's arrival, the young men and women turned to look at him curiously, wondering who Feng was for the 5 States Corporation to treat him as a guest. However, after getting berated by their elderly instructor, they promptly focused on their training again. "Seems I really can't underestimate the 5 States Corporation." Feng was surprised when he spread his senses across the mansion. There are 6 Grandmasters and more than 10 half-step Grandmasters in this mansion alone. Even the Boulder Corporation doesn't have this many experts. After guiding Feng to a reception room on the 3rd floor, Zhou Xian pushed apart the wooden doors to the room and said, "Mr. Shi, the young master is waiting inside." Feng nodded and walked into the room. He found Han Yifeng seated behind a solid wood desk with his eyes closed. Currently, Han Yifeng did not exude the slightest bit of aura and felt no different from an ordinary person. Compared to the last time Feng had met him, Han Yifeng's aura had changed dramatically. Upon sensing Feng's arrival, Han Yifeng opened his eyes. Revealing a faint smile, Han Yifeng said, "Brother Shi, I didn't think you would come to find me so soon. I expected you would wait for the last 10 days to get a better price." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. At this point, Feng's name was already known throughout Yuantian City's upper zone. Not only was he the cause of Wang Xuanming's banishment from the upper zone, but he was even Zero Wing's guild leader. The resources he had on hand tempted many of the corporations participating in this season's contribution competition. If not for Wang Xuanming's teacher Fu Jiuzhong, many of the corporations based in Yuantian City's upper zone would have long since visited Feng and proposed a partnership. I doubt that will happen. "I know I am not your only source of contribution points, young Master Han. Had I waited until the last moment, I probably would have gotten a lower price instead. You might not even have wanted my points at that time," Feng said, shaking his head. Originally, Feng had indeed considered waiting for a better price. Now though, he couldn't afford the delay. Zero Wing urgently needed a large amount of resources, especially life potions. The life potion was the perfect drug to improve one's physical fitness. If not for the limitation of physical fitness, Fire Dance, Lei Bao and several other people in Zero Wing would have long since become neutralizing grandmasters. "Brother Shi, you jest. In that case, we'll proceed with the 2-to-1 ratio we previously agreed on. I'll buy however many points you have," Han Yifeng said, chuckling. However, Feng shook his head and countered in a determined voice, "No, I want a 1-to-1 ratio." Chapter 2883. Overnight Fortune, 1-to-1. Han Yifeng frowned. "Brother Shi, isn't your asking price a little too high?" At this time, Han Yifeng wasn't the only one dissatisfied. Standing by the door, Zhou Xian looked at Feng with a hint of anger and ridicule in his eyes. A 1-to-1 exchange ratio was something no organization operating in Yuantian City's upper zone would accept. Life potions and phantom potions served as an organization's foundation. Their stockpile was also something accumulated over many years. These potions weren't items that one could obtain on a whim. Yet Feng wanted to purchase these precious potions at a 1-to-1 exchange rate. Did he take the Five States Corporation for a fool? The Five States Corporation had many sources for contribution points. Meanwhile, these sources only sought a 2-to-1 ratio. On what basis was Feng asking for a 1-to-1 ratio? Young Master Han, don't be in a hurry to refuse, Feng said, smiling as he looked at Han Yifeng's cold expression. A 1-to-1 ratio is a fair price. A fair price? Han Yifeng laughed. May I know how you think it is fair, Brother Shi? Because I can guarantee you a slot to enter the middle layer, young Master Han. Feng said confidently. Do you think this is a fair deal now? At Feng's words, Han Yifeng's cold expression changed slightly. However, he quickly recollected himself and asked, those are some confident words, Brother Shi. If what you say is true, I can consider a 1-to-1 ratio. May I know what exactly you are counting on to help me? 600,000 contribution points. That, combined with the points you already have. While I don't know if you can secure first place, getting within the top 3 shouldn't be a problem, right? According to Mushin's information, the top 3 rankers' limit should be around 1 million contribution points. It would be difficult for them to acquire more than this because one could earn only so many contribution points through real-world resources. The only other way these top rankers could acquire more points would be to obtain many 7 Luminaries crystals in God's domain. However, 7 Luminaries crystals were incredibly precious in God's domain, and even the various superpowers barely had any. Being cured/beat Feng estimated that acquiring 800,000 contribution points shouldn't be a problem for the Five States Corporation. If the corporation included his 600,000 points, it could secure one of the top 3 spots with a 100% certainty. When Feng finished speaking, Xianxia couldn't help staring at Feng in disbelief, his eyes very nearly falling out of their sockets. Each of the Five States Corporation's point sources could contribute only several tens of thousands of contribution points. After totaling the points from all sources, the corporation should gain around 600,000 contribution points. Not to mention, these sources would not necessarily sell all their points to the Five States Corporation. After all, the upper zone's various organizations were purchasing contribution points at a high price. The Five States Corporation would be fortunate if it could acquire 400,000 contribution points in the end. However, if the corporation could gain an additional 600,000 contribution points now, it could secure one of the top 3 spots in the competition. At this time, even Han Yifeng was visibly moved. 600,000. He has this much strength. In Han Yifeng's opinion, taking out 200,000 contribution points would be plenty impressive already. After all, 7 Luminaries crystals were not easy to acquire in God's domain. Feng had even traded some with him already. With 600,000 contribution points as his base, Feng could even try to fight for one of the top 3 positions himself. Feng smiled when he saw Han Yifeng's reaction. He then asked, "What do you think, young Master Han?" If Han Yifeng had 1 million contribution points as his base, all he needed to do next was acquire another 300,000 points or so to solidify his victory. After pondering for a moment, Han Yifeng gritted his teeth and said, "That is indeed sufficient qualification. However, a 1-to-1 ratio is still too much. The Five States Corporation can't take out so many potions in a short time. If converted to trade points, 600,000 contribution points would be worth 60 million trade points. And when converted to life potions, that would be equivalent to 12,000 life potions. This was by no means a trifling amount." Feng didn't find Han Yifeng's words surprising either. Instead, he chuckled and said, "If that's the case, how about this? I'll only ask for 2,000 potions. I'll exchange the remainder for a large mansion in the upper zone. What do you think? I recall that the Five States Corporation still has the authority to purchase another one." The base layer had only 10 large mansions and only 8 had owners. After some research, Feng found that these large mansions were excellent accommodations. Not only could they house 40 people easily, but the strange energy in the air was also much denser in these large mansions. This denser energy would be of greater help in stabilizing gentle snow and aqua rose's condition. "Feng, don't go too far," Xianxia blurted angrily. "A 1-to-1 ratio is already an astronomical price. Yet you're asking for a large mansion that's worth 140 million trade points? Do you take the 5 states corporation for a fool? The value of 10,000 life potions was equivalent to only 50 million trade points, a little more than 1/3 of a large mansion's value. Feng's terms were no different from daylight robbery. My asking price is indeed a little excessive, but purchasing a large mansion doesn't require you to spend contribution points. You only need to have accumulated 100 million contribution points. Meanwhile, not only will my 7 luminaries crystals provide you with contribution points, but they will also provide you with an ample amount of trade points. Exchanging a large mansion for these crystals wouldn't be a loss for your corporation, Feng said. Of course, if your corporation isn't willing to do this transaction, I can find someone else to partner with. I believe the other people competing for the top 3 spots will be interested in my proposal. Xianxia was momentarily rendered speechless by Feng. What Feng said was indeed true. Contribution points were far more important than trade points, especially in the middle layer. Moreover, compared to contribution points, trade points were much easier to acquire. That's enough, old Shua. Feng shot a glance at his butler, silencing him. He then returned his gaze to Feng and said, I agree to your offer. However, I will need time to acquire the large mansion. As for the potions, I can give you 1,000 bottles now. I will pay you the remaining 1,000 bottles and the large mansion within the next 5 days. What do you think? Sure, I don't have any problem with that. Feng nodded. In Feng's opinion, the 5 days Feng stated were only a ploy. Feng wanted to purchase as many contribution points as possible from his other sources during these 5 days because once news of his acquisition of 600,000 contribution points spread, purchasing points would become much more difficult. Afterward, Feng signed a contract with Feng. According to the agreement, Feng would transfer 60,000 7 luminaries crystals to Feng through God's domain within half a day. At the same time, Feng would pay Feng 1,500 bottles of life potion, 500 bottles of phantom potion, and 1 large mansion in return. With the contract signed, Feng had Zhou pass 100 bottles of life potion to Feng, with the rest to be delivered secretly to Feng's house. After concluding the deal, Feng left the 5 States Corporation's mansion with a crate of life potions. Meanwhile, after Feng left, Xianxia turned to Feng and warned quietly, Young master, your elders will criticize you if they find out you made such an unfavorable deal. Criticize? Sending Xianxia a glance, Feng sneered. So long as I get into the middle layer, do you think I'll care about what they have to say? Everyone living in the base layer wished to enter the middle layer. The environment there far surpassed the base layers. The middle layer was also home to many mental strength masters. If he could befriend even one of these masters, his position within the 5 States Corporation would become unshakable. At that time, would he have to care about the criticisms of his elders? Gazing through the window at the distant middle layer with eyes burning with zeal, Feng said, Head out and purchase contribution points from those organizations immediately. It doesn't matter even if you have to offer them a 1:5 ratio. While Feng was secretly going around purchasing contribution points from various organizations, Feng left the upper zone together with his crate of life potions. Previously, despite receiving the secret pavilions and Netherworld Empire's guild legacies, Zero Wing could afford to nurture only a small number of experts due to its limited resources. However, now that Zero Wing had sufficient life potions, let alone Void Realm experts, the guild could nurture even Domain Realm experts within a short time. This was something even the various superpowers couldn't accomplish. After all, when nurturing new talents, the superpowers would provide only S-rank nutrient fluids at most, not something as precious as the life potion. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Meanwhile, when Feng left the upper zone, Elder Qi and the others stalking him were stunned. Is this kid crazy? A Honglian Grandmaster asked when he saw Feng entering the mental path. He dares to leave the upper zone at this time? Could it be that he didn't notice us in the first place? A lanky neutralizing Grandmaster wondered. There's no way he hasn't noticed us. I am certain on this point. Elder Qi declared. Looking at Feng's distant figure coldly, he continued. He's looking down on us. Since he's so arrogant, I'll fulfill his wish. Everyone get ready to take action outside. I want to see what ability this kid has. After saying so, Elder Qi promptly set off after Feng. The other experts followed Elder Qi after briefly exchanging looks with one another. Chapter 2884, Ruthless. Feng Fenglin City, Zero Wing's headquarters. Feng stood in front of Zero Wing's headquarters. The place had undergone significant changes since his last visit. Currently, people crowded the plaza in front of the building, many of them young men and women. These people were either waiting to enter the building or taking various tests out in the plaza. This prosperous site was even more spectacular than what could be found at the various super guilds' headquarters. As Feng made his way to the entrance, he overheard these young men and women discussing Zero Wing's matters. As they spoke about Zero Wing City's training environment or the heaven-defying battle that had taken place at Ancient Rock City, their eyes glowed with anticipation. Before Feng could reach the entrance, a long-haired man in his 30s approached him. Looking at Feng, who was clad in sportswear, the long-haired man said in a friendly tone, "Friend, you're here to join Zero Wing, right?" "Me? Join Zero Wing?" Feng was stunned by the long-haired man's words. Although the long-haired man looked ordinary, Feng sensed intense life force from him. In terms of physical fitness, the long-haired man could practically rival Henglian masters. However, before Feng could say anything, the long-haired man unzipped his jacket and revealed a six-winged emblem pinned on his t-shirt, proving that he was an internal member of Zero Wing. "I can tell that you're extraordinary at a glance, brother," the long-haired man said while showing off his emblem. He then pointed at the long line of people waiting to enter the building and grinned, saying, "Look at how long that line is. If you grab a ticket and join the line now, it'll take you forever before your turn arrives. However, I'm an internal member of Zero Wing. I have a recommendation slot that lets me help one person bypass the initial test." "What are you trying to say?" Feng asked curiously. "I can see that you're extraordinary, so I plan to recommend you to the guild. However, once you become an internal member of Zero Wing, you'll need to join my team. What do you think?" Looking at Feng with a serious look, the long-haired man said earnestly, "The team I belong to is extraordinary. Although it was established only recently, it has become a second-line team already. It's only one line behind the main force." Feng was at a loss for words. He never imagined such competition existed between Zero Wing's various teams. If he weren't Zero Wing's guild leader, he would have most likely been tempted by the long-haired man's words already. After all, apart from Zero Wing's main force, any other team that had a Tier 4 player leading it would be considered a second-line team. Meanwhile, all second-line teams could raid level 150 100-man hard mode team dungeons. "What? You don't believe me?" Upon seeing Feng's startled expression, the long-haired man said delightedly, "Do you know who my team leader is? You'll get a fright if I tell you." Just when Feng wondered who this strange man's team leader was, the sounds of fighting came from inside the lobby. The din was like a sledgehammer pounding the ground. However, neither the long-haired man nor the other Zero Wing members present showed any concern over these loud sounds, appearing wholly accustomed to them. The newcomers, though, all expressed curiosity and tried sneaking peeks into the lobby. "Ignore that. It's nothing to fuss about," the long-haired man said when he saw the curiosity on Feng's face. He then added nonchalantly, "It's just the experts of another superpower coming to provoke Zero Wing. I believe Master Lei Bao will take care of them in a moment." Feng asked, "Have there been a lot of such situations happening in Zero Wing lately?" "It's been like this since before I joined. However, it's become much more frequent recently," the long-haired man said as he nodded in frustration. "These superpowers can't bear to see Zero Wing developing. However, as they can't do anything to us in God's domain, they keep coming to our headquarters to make trouble. They keep asking us to sell them Zero Wing City's lands. I heard that the group that came here this time consists of 6 superpowers, one of them the Super Guild Mythology. Mythology's group is even led by the Feng family's young lady. That Feng Shihan really is something. Not only is she beautiful, but she's also frighteningly strong. She can take down master-level experts in practically one hit. I'm afraid only our big sis Fire Dance can take her on." The long-haired man shuddered when he spoke of Feng Shihan. It was evident he feared the latter greatly. After the long-haired man finished speaking, the lobby's door opened abruptly, and a group of people stalked out of the building. These people were representatives of superpowers, and they currently had angry expressions. However, when they looked at Fire Dance and Lei Bao, who walked out of the building shortly after them, and then looked at the injured master-level experts and one half-step neutralizing grandmaster beside them. They dared not do anything. Just you wait. Don't think that just because we are helpless against you in God's domain, you'll be invincible in the real world as well. Zero Wing will only encounter more trouble for refusing to cooperate with us. The various superpowers representatives barked arrogantly at Fire Dance and Lei Bao, their voices growing complacent as they spoke. While master-level experts might be powerless against Zero Wing, there were bound to be superpowers capable of inviting grandmaster-level experts to move for them. The corporations operating within the upper zone might even take action. After all, Zero Wing was too large a cake to pass on. According to the information the various superpowers had gathered, some forces based in the upper zone were already investigating Zero Wing, evidently interested in the guild. Hence, it was only a matter of time before Grandmaster-level experts came to find trouble with Zero Wing. Fire Dance and Lei Bao revealed somewhat grim expressions on their faces when they heard the representative's words. They had expected the battle at Ancient Rock City to have caught the attention of many organizations in the upper zone. Hence, they were certain that Grandmaster-level experts would eventually come to Zero Wing seeking trouble. While these Grandmasters might not be capable of doing anything against Zero Wing on the surface, if they came every day to pick a fight, it would ruin Zero Wing's reputation, not to mention the other unscrupulous tactics they could employ. However, when the various superpowers representatives were getting full of themselves, Feng Shihan suddenly left the group and headed toward Feng. The cold gaze she directed at him made the temperature in the surroundings fall by more than 10 degrees. The long-haired man standing beside Feng shuddered in fear despite himself. Looking at Feng, the long-haired man asked, "Friend, did you offend her in some way before? Why do I get the feeling that she's coming for you?" In this situation, the nearby young men also looked at Feng and began a quiet discussion. They all wondered who Feng was to warrant such attention from a great beauty like Feng Shihan. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. I don't think I've done anything to her, Feng said. He likewise found it strange that Feng Shihan was walking to him. After giving the matter some thought, he added, "The only things I remember doing are killing one of her elders and telling her to get lost. I don't think I've ever done anything else to her." Feng's words stupefied the long-haired man. He never thought that Feng would be so ruthless as to pull such stunts with the Feng family's lady. It would be strange if Feng Shihan didn't try to take Feng's life. However, when Feng Shihan arrived in front of Feng, she looked at him and asked quietly, "Can I speak with you in private?" Immediately, be it the long-haired man or the other men present, they all couldn't help staring at Feng with wide eyes. What was going on here? Chapter 2885 Sword Saint Black Flame? Feng couldn't help taking a closer look at Feng Shihan when he heard her words. Currently, Feng Shihan looked slightly frilier than the last time he saw her. She also no longer exuded the imposing aura of before, although the ambition in her eyes still burned bright. Just the two of us? Feng stole a glance at the robust Matt and an elderly man standing among the group of superpower representatives. This elderly man possessed a powerful life force. He was absolutely a Grandmaster-level expert. Moreover, judging by how respectfully Matt was behaving around this elderly man, it was easy to guess that the elderly man held an eminent position in mythology. He should be a guild elder at the very least. However, seeing as Feng Shihan was asking for a private conversation, Feng could tell that Feng Shihan had her own thoughts and that these thoughts did not align with mythology's plans. "That's right, just the two of us." Feng Shihan nodded, then glanced at the long-haired man beside Feng and smiled sweetly, saying, "Of course you can bring someone with you. However, it's not my fault if our relationship gets exposed." The long-haired man immediately revealed a look of shock and confusion when he heard Feng Shihan's words. Feng Shihan was the young lady of a major corporation. According to rumor, she was even an upper zone resident. In addition, not only did she possess a divine level of beauty, but she was even a vice-guild leader of mythology. Countless talented young men wished to get close to her but never got the opportunity to do so. She had an air of indifference even when dealing with Zero Wing's big shots like Cola. Nevertheless, she was taking the initiative to seek out Feng. Her friendly behavior with Feng made the long-haired man doubt if she was even the same person as before. "Who is this guy?" Questions filled the long-haired man's mind as he looked at Feng. However, after snapping out of his daze, he gazed at Feng with anticipation shining in his eyes. Feng was an individual of high status. If he could get close to her by even a little bit, even if he were only a third wheel, this achievement would earn him bragging rights for the rest of his life. Alright, just the two of us then. Feng nodded, ignoring the hopeful look the long-haired man was giving him. Feng Shifan was not at all surprised by Feng's response. She pointed at a maglev limousine nearby and said, "Let's talk in my car then. Nobody will bother us there." Zero Wing's battle at Ancient Rock City had thoroughly shaken God's domain. Zero Wing City's public opening also allowed Zero Wing to rake in tons of wealth and resources every day. The resources earned even included the 7 Luminaries crystal that the upper zone's various forces sought to obtain. The city was so tempting that even the 5 great super guilds had designs on it, let alone Feng Shirhan. Zero Wing was currently rejecting all partnership offers for Zero Wing City, choosing to monopolize all of the city's benefits. The various superpowers could not get even the smallest cut of this juicy pie. To make matters worse, none of the superpowers could do anything about this situation. However, Feng Shirhan was confident she could accomplish what the various superpowers couldn't. With her family's position and resources in the upper zone, she should be able to get Zero Wing to agree to a partnership. After all, Feng was currently in a lot of trouble because he had offended a mental strength master. Although Feng lived in a different upper zone from Fujiuzhong, the mental strength master had plenty of means to deal with him. Among the organizations operating within the 3 upper zones based in the country, those capable of protecting Feng numbered very few. The Feng family just so happened to be one of them. When Feng saw the maglev limousine, a hint of envy appeared in his eyes. This limousine was a global limited edition, and it was constructed with a top-tier alloy used for spacecraft. This alloy not only had excellent sound insulation properties but could even withstand missile strikes. He had thought of buying one for Zero Wing but lacked the connection to do so. Nodding, Feng said, "Sure, let's get in the car." "In that case, this way please, Guild Leader Black Flame." Feng Shirhan smiled and took the initiative to lead Feng to the limousine. Her words left the long-haired man stupefied. The guild leader?" The long-haired man stared at Feng's back with wide eyes. When he recalled how he had treated Feng like a little brother, he suddenly felt faint. After all, Black Flame's name in God's domain was synonymous with a killing god. He would create rivers of blood because of a disagreement. He had even killed one of mythology's legendary figures without hesitation. The long-haired man wasn't the only one stunned by this revelation. The young men and women in queue also took some time to process this information. "He's Guild Leader Black Flame? Toei. He's that sword saint. Don't the rumors say that Guild Leader Black Flame is a man in his 30s? That guy looks no more than 22 or 23. Apart from Zero Wing's executives and a portion of the guild's core members, the only other people who knew Black Flame's actual identity and appearance in the real world were the various superpowers executives. The average player was unaware that Black Flame was only a disguise. You really know how to keep a low profile, Guild Leader Black Flame. Even the internal members of your own guild don't know who you are," Feng Shirhan said, smiling when she looked back and saw the long-haired man's pale complexion. "That guy will probably lose sleep for the next several days." Feng rolled his eyes at Feng Shirhan. Feng Shirhan knew that the long-haired man was unaware of his identity as Black Flame and had deliberately revealed his identity to mess with the man. However, when Feng and Feng Shirhan were roughly 10 steps from the limousine, Feng suddenly stopped and turned to the crowd in the plaza. "Guild Leader Black Flame? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World." Feng Shirhan was a little confused by Feng's actions. She followed Feng's gaze and looked toward the plaza. Although there were well over 1,000 people crowded in the plaza, Feng Shirhan faintly sensed killing intent from that direction. Moreover, there wasn't just one source of killing intent but more than a dozen. This killing intent was well hidden. If one weren't a half-step Grandmaster expert or above, one would have difficulty noticing it. "This can't be. That side is already taking action." Feng Shifan frowned. Only the Infinity Master Fujiuzhong could mobilize so many powerful experts. She whispered to Feng, "Guild Leader Black Flame, they should be experts the Infinity Master sent. The other side has a significant advantage in numbers. It's best if we pretend we didn't notice them and get into the car quickly." Even if it's them, they can't do anything against my car. A force of over a dozen half-step grandmasters or above was indeed powerful. However, against the global limited edition limousine, even these experts could only lament their lack of strength. This was also why many major corporations wished to purchase this limousine. However, only 100 people in the world actually managed to get their hands on one. No, there's no need for that, Feng said, shaking his head. He then began walking toward the plaza. I initially planned to ignore them, but since they came all the way here, I'll deal with them now. It's annoying to have them constantly buzzing me like flies. Chapter 2886, Mental Strength Master? When Feng Shihan saw Feng slowly making his way to the plaza, she was stunned. She never thought Feng would confront the enemy. The enemy had over a dozen half-step grandmaster experts or better on their side. Among the sources of killing intent she sensed, a few even struck fear into her. Facing so many experts of such caliber, even a Honglian grandmaster would suffer miserably. This crazy bastard. Feng Shihan gritted her teeth and followed after Feng. She was the Feng family's young lady. Even the upper zones organizations would have to show her some respect. If she stood up for Feng, the other party wouldn't dare go too far lest they incur the Feng family's wrath. However, before Feng Shihan could catch up to Feng, 14 people in the crowd approached him. They had concealed their auras so well that they looked no different from ordinary pedestrians. None of the people around them paid them any attention. Kid, since you're so eager to die, I'll grant you your wish. Elder Qi said when he saw that Feng had already walked into the crowd. Sneering, he commanded, everyone attack. If Feng had chosen to remain somewhere with little foot traffic, they would quickly get noticed by others if they took action. However, it was a different story in a crowded location like this plaza. With their standards, they could attack Feng without anyone noticing. By the time the bystanders realized what was going on, they would have long since left the scene. The distance between both sides continuously shortened. 30 meters, 20 meters, 10 meters. When the two sides were less than 3 meters apart, one Honglian grandmaster, one neutralizing grandmaster, and 4 half-step grandmasters began walking straight toward Feng. The 6 experts continued moving like ordinary pedestrians, with the 4 half-step grandmasters even chatting merrily like close friends. Nobody could tell that these 6 experts were approaching Feng with hostile intentions. When the 4 half-step grandmasters were within 1 meter of Feng, both the 4 half-step grandmasters and the 2 true grandmasters took action simultaneously, so fast that ordinary people couldn't even see their afterimages. The 6 experts launched punches, palm strikes and claw strikes. Aimed at Feng's vitals, their attacks did not create even the slightest ripple in the air. Although the 6 experts had different strength levels, their coordination was perfect, and they moved as if they were of one body. Feng Shihan's complexion darkened at this scene. If she were in Feng's shoes, she could, at best, stop 2 or 3 attacks. The rest would land on her without fail. It might be a different story if a Honglian grandmaster received these attacks, but Feng was only a neutralizing grandmaster. He would most definitely die if he received all these attacks. However, when the 6 experts' attacks were about to land, Feng's body suddenly twitched and moved like flowing water. As if his various body parts had a mind of their own, they instinctively dodged the 6 experts' attacks. Feng's movements were so fine that he dodged some attacks with less than half a centimeter to spare. Bro/beak, the 6 experts were startled by this outcome. However, before they could launch another round of attacks, Feng casually scraped his shoulder past one of them and bumped into another. He then executed a punch, an elbow strike, a palm strike and a kick against his other 4 opponents. The next moment, the 2 grandmasters and 4 half-step grandmasters stiffened and stopped moving. They stood still among the crowd like statues. When Feng had walked 3 meters away, the 6 experts' eyes rolled back and their bodies collapsed to the ground. How is this possible? Feng Shihan's eyes widened and her jaw dropped at this scene. Of the 6 experts, 2 were bona fide grandmasters, one of them a Honglian grandmaster. Yet Feng had taken care of these experts in the blink of an eye. The fight had ended so quickly that she didn't even see what had happened. She might have been able to accept such an outcome if the 2 grandmasters were both neutralizing grandmasters. With internal force, Feng could knock them out instantly when his attacks connected. However, knocking out a Honglian Grandmaster in one hit was an incredibly difficult feat otherwise. Honglian Grandmasters wouldn't be renowned as troublesome opponents. Feng Shihan wasn't the only person shocked by this situation. Elder Qi and the other experts similarly tensed up at this scene. Even they were incapable of defeating Honglian Grandmasters in one hit. While Feng might have employed a dirty tactic, there was no denying that he had felled a Honglian Grandmaster in one hit. The remaining experts turned to Elder Qi to seek his opinion on the matter. Elder Qi was their leader this time. He also possessed incredible strength, being slightly stronger than even the well-known Wang Xianming. If Elder Qi chose not to attack now, they naturally did not need to attack either. After all, Feng's display of strength just now had thoroughly stunned them. Feng's feat was even more unbelievable than a person killing an elephant with one punch. Seeing Feng approaching their group, Elder Qi gritted his teeth and advanced. Although Elder Qi didn't know what method Feng employed just now, he was confident he could stop any neutralizing Grandmaster's attack. After all, his mental strength was just a tad short of the mental strength master level. His perception and sixth sense were both much stronger than the average Honglian Grandmasters. All tricks were useless against him. When the other experts saw Elder Qi moving, they quickly followed after him. However, their mentality toward Feng was completely different from before. Now they had ramped up their vigilance to the max. Elder Qi's group of 8 split up and approached Feng from 8 different directions. They occasionally used the crowd to conceal their bodies and obscure their movements from Feng. However, Feng remained unfazed and continued approaching Elder Qi casually. What arrogance! Do you think I'll fall for your tricks like those fools? Elder Qi accelerated his footsteps when he saw Feng's indifference, not wanting to give Feng any more time to observe and prepare. With 6 Grandmasters in their group of 8, they could give even a mental strength master a headache if they attacked together. After all, a mental strength master's physical fitness was only slightly superior to theirs. What made mental strength masters powerful was their perception of danger and their control over their bodies. However, when Elder Qi was less than 6 meters away from Feng, he suddenly lost sight of Feng. He disappeared. Elder Qi was stunned as he stared at the spot Feng disappeared from. Feng had vanished not only from his vision but also from his perception. Elder Qi and the 7 other experts immediately began looking around frantically, searching for Feng. Several seconds later, Elder Qi suddenly noticed a figure walking past him, and he was stunned once more. Feng? However, before Elder Qi could turn around, he felt a stinging pain in his chest. He then found his body paralyzed and his vision darkened as if death had come for him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. When Elder Qi saw Feng disappearing past him, a thought appeared in his mind and fear surfaced on his face. Strength master. Apart from Feng being a mental strength master, Elder Qi couldn't think of any other explanation for this situation. After all, only a mental strength master could evade his perception. However, before Elder Qi could warn the others, he noticed Feng walking past his approaching companions, one after another. Unlike himself though, his companions didn't even notice Feng. And after Feng passed them, their bodies abruptly stiffened. It was evident that they had suffered a similar fate to his. In the end, Elder Qi could only watch helplessly as his companions collapsed one after another. Chapter 2887, Powerful Mental Strength Master. When Elder Qi and the others collapsed, one after another in the plaza, they quickly attracted the attention of the surrounding people. The small plaza grew noisy for a time as the passers-by gathered around these collapsed experts and discussed among themselves. Feng exited the crowd in the meantime, his departure going entirely unnoticed. He had practically zero presence, as if he was no different from the roadside trees and bushes. He's a mental strength master. Shock filled Feng Shihan's eyes as she switched her gaze between Feng and Elder Qi's group. She felt like her world had just come crashing down on her. Apart from Feng being a mental strength master, she could think of no other explanation for how he had defeated a force of 8 Grandmasters and 6 half-step Grandmasters so easily. Despite knowing this, Feng Shihan still couldn't bring herself to believe Feng was a mental strength master. Mental strength masters were big shots even in the upper zone, and every one of them lived in the middle layer. Numerous organizations based in the upper zone tried to curry favor with these individuals. All of these powerhouses had reached the level of a mental strength master only in their 30s or later. On the other hand, how old was Feng now? Not to mention, according to Feng Shihan's investigations, when Feng first entered the upper zone several weeks ago, the Green God Company had evaluated his mental strength as special grade only. He had still been a long distance from master grade. When Feng arrived in front of Feng Shihan, she finally snapped out of her daze. She then scrutinized him as if she was meeting him for the first time. Has your mental strength reached the master level already? Feng Shihan asked despite herself. Although she was already certain Feng was a mental strength master, she still couldn't believe that someone could reach this level before 25. If news of this matter spread, it would shake the entire upper zone. Even the Green God Company's executives would take an interest in Feng once they learned of his potential. Meanwhile, the Green God Company's executives were existences even mental strength masters wanted to befriend. These executives helmed the various upper zones, individuals standing at the top of the upper zone. I had the fortune of achieving a breakthrough recently. Feng nodded, not bothering to conceal this fact. He then turned to look at the collapsed experts in the plaza, an indescribable feeling appearing in his heart. Previously, when he had first become a mental strength master, he had noticed that his body's physical fitness had improved significantly. The sharpness of his perception had also become far superior to before. However, only after clashing with Elder Qi and the others did Feng realize how powerful and frightening mental strength masters could be. Mental strength masters might be only slightly superior to Honglian grandmasters in physical fitness, but their control over their bodies reached an incredible level. Not only could they control the fine movements of muscles in the physical body, but they could also exert much greater control over their brains. While in combat, Feng had managed to accelerate his thought processes by more than tenfold. In his eyes, Elder Qi and the others had looked like they were moving in slow motion. After including his enhanced perception of his surroundings, let alone dodging the eyesight and senses of several grandmasters, he could even replicate God's domain's void steps momentarily. It was no wonder the upper zone's various organizations feared mental strength masters so much. Feng also felt fortunate that he had been cautious and stayed indoors for the past few weeks. Otherwise, he might have really ended up in trouble. After all, killing a lone grandmaster-level expert was child's play for a mental strength master. Meanwhile, after Feng's admission, Feng Shihan was momentarily at a loss for words. Originally, she had hoped to acquire a portion of Zero Wing City's resources by offering Feng protection. In doing so, she could increase her authority within mythology and solidify her position as the first vice guild leader. Now her plan was nothing but a joke. There was no way a mental strength master would fear another mental strength master. More importantly, with how young Feng was, once the Green God Company found out about his achievement, the company would undoubtedly place heavy importance on him. The status he would enjoy at that time would far exceed Fu Jiuzheng's. After all, the Infinity Master was already an old man and showed precious little signs of improvement nowadays. So long as Fu Jiuzheng wasn't a fool, he would give up on revenge against Feng. On the contrary, he might even try to mend his relationship with Feng. After all, the life of mental strength masters in the upper zone's middle layer wasn't as smooth sailing as others thought. Looking at the vacant expression on Feng Shihan's face, Feng asked strangely, "The trouble has been dealt with already. Do you still see a problem in this, Miss Feng?" Feng Shihan recovered from her stupor at Feng's words. Putting away her previous nonchalant attitude, she said respectfully, "You jest, Master Shi. The powers behind those experts will be scared stiff once they hear about your current status and identity. How could they possibly cause you any more problems?" "Is that so?" Feng felt a little awkward when Feng Shihan suddenly spoke to him respectfully. Her passionate gaze, in particular, was as if she had just seen an absolute beauty. It gave him an uncomfortable feeling. "Master Shi, my visit this time isn't for anything significant." After observing Feng a little while longer, Feng Shihan revealed a rare smile and said, "I only wish to partner with Zero Wing on a personal level." "A personal partnership?" Feng wasn't particularly surprised by these words. Calmly, he asked, "May I know what kind of partnership you have in mind?" Taking a deep breath, Feng Shihan said solemnly, "I am willing to invest 100 billion into Zero Wing to help develop all of the guild's necessary facilities and territories." Simultaneously, I can also provide 10 reserve slots for the upper zone and 1,000 bottles of potions of various kinds. I will also bring a large batch of peak experts and over 300 plots of land located in the NPC cities of both the eastern and western continents into Zero Wing. Feng couldn't help being tempted when he heard Feng Shihan's offer. He then asked, "What are your conditions?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. The funding aside, just the 1,000 bottles of various potions, the large batch of peak experts, and 300 plots of land were more than enough to elevate Zero Wing's overall strength by a large margin. Zero Wing would instantly surpass ordinary super guilds. It would be a lie to say this offer didn't tempt him. The lands of the Western continent's NPC cities in particular were things Zero Wing needed urgently right now. With these lands, Zero Wing could maximize the use of its intercontinental teleportation array. The guild might even be able to establish a solid foothold on the Western continent in one fell swoop. Seeing the interest in Feng's eyes, Feng Shihan replied, "Simple. Become my backer." Feng was slightly stunned as he looked at Feng Shihan, his mind failing to comprehend her words momentarily. What's going on? Chapter 2888, Zero Wing in an uproar. Feng Shihan couldn't help a smile when she saw Feng's stunned face. She then asked leisurely, "Do my conditions confuse you, Master Shi?" "Indeed, a little." Feng nodded. There was no doubt that the Feng family had extraordinary origins. Moreover, Feng Shihan herself was mythology's first vice-guild leader. No matter how he looked at it, the woman already had a boundless future ahead of her. She was an existence nobody in the outside world dared to offend. He might have become a mental strength master, but the benefits he could bring to Feng Shihan were merely limited to the upper zone's commodities. This was also the main reason the upper zone's various organizations bent over backward for mental strength masters. Apart from these trade commodities, he found it hard to imagine what other help Feng Shihan might need from him. "I believe you should also understand what it means to own wealth beyond one's capabilities, Master Shi." Sighing, Feng Shihan said slowly, "The Feng family used to have a mental strength master. However, along with this master's passing, the Feng family's circumstances in the upper zone have deteriorated. At this point, many of the middle layer's various organizations are even targeting the middle layer reserve slot I own. Hence, I hope you can intervene in this matter for me, Master Shi. If you do, those organizations might back off out of fear." A reserve slot for the middle layer? Feng was startled by Feng Shihan's words. The reserve slots for the upper zone's base layer were already incomparably precious, and they were more than enough to tempt the base layer's various organizations. A reserve slot for the middle layer would be even more precious and tempting. Moreover, based on Feng Shihan's words, this reserve slot was transferable. It didn't bind to specific individuals after use. This reserve slot was countless times more precious than the temporary 3-month slots the base layer's organizations competed for in the contribution competitions. It would be strange if the middle layer's organizations were not interested in acquiring this reserve slot. "Master Shi, would you be willing to cooperate?" Feng Shihan asked, a hint of apprehension flashing across her eyes as she looked at Feng. Originally, she had already decided to give up on this reserve slot because she couldn't keep it with mythology's strength. However, an opportunity had presented itself to her now. If she found the help of an ordinary mental strength master, the middle layer's various organizations wouldn't fear her at all. They would still try to snatch her reserve slot without fear. However, it was a different story if the mental strength master were Feng. Feng had become a mental strength master at an unprecedentedly young age. With his potential, the Green God Company was bound to place great importance on him. So long as Feng was willing to stand up for her, she might be able to keep this reserve slot. After Feng gave the matter some thought, he said, "All right, I agree to your conditions. However, I need to add one condition." "Please speak, Master Shi," Feng Shihan responded without hesitation. 100 million trade points. Feng stated. "What are your thoughts on this, Miss Feng?" Apart from the trade points he earned from trading in 7 luminaries crystals to the Green God Company some time ago, he hadn't made any extra points during this period. Meanwhile, apart from life potions, he also needed to spend a lot of trade points while living in the upper zone. This would only increase after he had Fire Dance and the others move into the upper zone. His expenditure of trade points would skyrocket if he had to nurture a mansion full of people. Hence acquiring trade points was a must. 100 million? After pondering the condition, Feng Shihan gritted her teeth and answered, "No problem. I can transfer them to you through my account." Once Feng Shihan agreed to his extra condition, Feng made his way into Zero Wing's headquarters and signed a contract with her, assuring both sides. After signing the contract, Feng Shihan promptly left Zero Wing's headquarters to make the necessary preparations. She acted decisively and carefully on this matter. Inside the maglev limousine heading to the airport, Vice Guild Leader, "Do you really intend to follow Feng in the future?" White Feather asked as she looked at Feng Shihan, who had her eyes closed and was deep in thought. "If you leave the guild so abruptly, the guild won't spare you. Although Feng is now a mental strength master, there are significant differences between mental strength masters. He won't necessarily be able to stop all the organizations operating in the middle layer. If he handles things poorly, you'll not only lose your reserve slot but also have to face the guild's retaliation." Mythology was one of the 5 great super guilds. Some of the upper zone organizations that had partnered with the guild because of God's domain had the support of powerful and high-ranking mental strength masters. Feng Shihan was Mythology's first vice guild leader. Her abrupt departure from Mythology would deal a massive blow to the guild's reputation and morale. Mythology would seek revenge for this matter, both in God's domain and in the upper zone. "I don't have a choice. This is my last chance," Feng Shihan replied with a wry smile. "If I continue waiting, I'll lose the reserve slot for sure. Once that happens, I doubt I can get it back even if a powerful mental strength master stands up for me. I can only pray that Feng is capable of fending off those greedy organizations now." Even mental strength masters had extreme difficulty securing one middle-layer reserve slot, and they treated these slots like family heirlooms. After all, these slots could allow a person to live in the middle layer unconditionally. If she couldn't retain this reserve slot, her chances of becoming a mental strength master were practically zero. In the upper zone's history, the people capable of becoming a mental strength master without ever setting foot into the upper zone's middle layer were few and far between. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that 99% of the mental strength masters that had ever walked this world became mental strength masters only after living in the middle layer for some time. While Feng Shihan was making her way back to the upper zone, news of Elder Chi's group getting crippled reached Yuantian City's upper zone, shocking the various organizations based there. None of these organizations ever thought that Feng possessed such frightening strength. He had single-handedly fended off the encirclement of so many Grandmaster-level experts. This unexpected development prompted many organizations looking to sell the Infinity Master a favor to shrink back. "What should we do, young master? The organizations in Haitian cities and Yuantian cities' upper zones are no longer willing to assist us," Ikue asked worriedly after calling Lu Tiandi. Moreover, now that Feng's prestige has increased, many organizations are considering partnering with him to acquire 7 Luminaries crystals from Zero Wing. "I understand. Withdraw from Yuantian City's upper zone for now," Lu Tiandi said, smiling faintly. "Teacher has learned about this situation. He'll most likely personally cripple Feng. All we need to do now is sit back and watch." "Yes, sir." Ikue grew joyful when he heard Lu Tiandi's words. If Fu Jiuzhong personally took action, then everything would be fine. Once Zero Wing no longer had Feng backing it, Starlink would have a much easier time annexing Zero Wing. Fenglin City, Zero Wing Tower. Along with Feng's return, excitement filled Zero Wing's members, particularly the experts who had joined Zero Wing only recently. The reason for everyone's excitement was Feng's awarding life potions to Fire Dance and a dozen other core executives in front of all of the guild's internal members. Afterward, he had announced that he would award those internal members who performed excellently with life potions. They even had the opportunity to enter the upper zone. This announcement threw the entire headquarters into an uproar. The upper zone was a dreamland countless people wished to enter. Let alone living in the upper zone, they usually didn't even dare dream of entering the upper zone. This was because the upper zone was a place only a select few organizations in the world could come into contact with. Ordinary civilians like themselves had no chance of entering the upper zone. However, the impossible had now become possible. "Guild leader, is this really fine?" Fire Dance asked worriedly when she saw the new reward system. In the new reward system, A Tier 4 internal member that successfully raised their mana body's completion rate to 110% would receive 3 bottles of life potion. Afterward, they would receive 1 bottle for every subsequent percent of improvement. If they reached 115%, they would receive another 3 bottles. There was also a reward for concentration standards. After one reached the Tier 4 basic concentration standard, every increase in rank would net them 1 phantom potion, 3 bottles if they reached the Tier 4 peak standard, and 10 bottles if they reached the Tier 5 standard. As for combat standards, internal members would receive 1 life potion if they reached the Void Realm and 3 bottles if they reached the Domain Realm. Most importantly, anyone in the guild who got promoted to Tier 5 would get to live in the upper zone with 100% certainty. Setting aside the upper zone's residency, just the reward of the various potions was already plenty absurd. Others might not understand how precious these potions were, but Fire Dance knew that these potions were available only in limited quantities. Relax. There won't be a problem, Feng said, chuckling. On the contrary, I hope more people can claim the rewards. The life potion was of significant help for improving a person's physical fitness. Meanwhile, if Zero Wing wished to develop quickly, it wouldn't do for the guild to rely solely on him. Zero Wing needed at least several Grandmaster-level experts under its command. Only then would it no longer have to fear the provocation of other forces. Hence, he needed to increase the rewards for Zero Wing's internal members. By doing so, he could also raise the motivation of Zero Wing's members and the chances of producing Void Realm experts and Domain Realm experts. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Moreover, with the life potions he provided, Fire Dance and Master Lei Bao would break through to the Grandmaster level in a few days. This was especially true for Fire Dance, who had already reached the Domain Realm in the realms of refinement and the Ascension Realm in the realms of truth. She only lacked a bit of inspiration and a boost to her brain activity to become a neutralizing Grandmaster. Afterward, Feng discussed the guild's rapid development with Fire Dance and the guild's other executives. Dealing with the Outer World Forces invasion wasn't an easy task. If handled poorly, the guild might lose Silverwing City and Ancient Rock City. One day went by quickly. It's about time I returned to the game. After taking a look at his watch, Feng drank a life potion, lay down in the virtual gaming cabin in his bedroom, and logged into God's domain. Chapter 2889, Astonishing Ancient Rock City Orc Empire, Ancient Rock City. When Feng appeared before Ancient Rock City's entrance, the city had already taken on a new look. It now had much taller walls covered with magic runes. Even though the city's core magic array was currently inactive, the magic runes naturally absorbed mana from the environment and generated a magic barrier. The magic barrier was so powerful that even a Tier 5 existence's full-powered attack might not break it. So long as there was mana within and around the city, this magic barrier would always exist. It would even automatically repair itself for free. Tall buildings had replaced the ruins inside the city, and a thin layer of fog surrounded this forest of buildings. The city's mana density practically rivaled Zero Wing cities already. When Feng took to the skies to get a better view of the city, the sight that greeted him gave him a burst of ecstasy. Did it get automatically promoted to main city? The current Ancient Rock City was slightly larger than even Zero Wing City. What used to be Saint's Hand's residence had been converted into a gigantic City Lord's mansion. The City Lord's mansion was well over 300 meters in height, and glowing divine runes surrounded the building. These divine runes didn't look man-made. Instead, the various elements of mana around the building formed them spontaneously. If players had a sufficiently high perception of the operating principles of mana, they could even learn the essence of the various elements of mana through these naturally occurring divine runes. No wonder cities with secret lands as their cores are of significant help to players in their tier promotions. Just these naturally occurring divine runes can already provide a significant boost to Tier 4 players. When you factor in the environment inside the Evil God's secret land as well, a Tier 4 player's chances of getting promoted to Tier 5 here should be 20 to 30% higher than in the outside world. Feng fell into a daze as he looked at the majestic City Lord's mansion. While Feng was quietly observing Ancient Rock City, the number of players around the city continuously increased. When these players laid their eyes on the city, they too were stupefied. What had originally been a ruined city was now a magnificent city much larger than even royal capitals. The mana density within the city was at a level where the mana was visible to the naked eye. Coupled with the city's proximity to the Orc Empire's inner region, it made for the perfect resting place for players seeking to raid the Orc capital city. Since more and more people were gathering, Feng promptly entered the city and flew toward the city lord's mansion. Now that cities no longer received protection from the system after undergoing an upgrade, Ancient Rock City was currently at its weakest. If hostile forces attacked the city now, defending it would be incredibly difficult. Hence, the first thing he needed to do was activate the City Lord's Mansion's core magic array and generate the city's defensive magic array. Now that Ancient Rock City had become a main city, so long as its defensive magic array was active and had a sufficient supply of magic crystals, the city could take on even 2 Tier 5 existences without trouble. After Feng entered the City Lord's Mansion, he was surprised once more. Not only did the City Lord's Mansion possess an environment rivaling that of the ancient god's domain, but the clarity of the operating principles of mana's various elements in this place surpassed even that of the secret underground room in Zero Wing City. Zero Wing City's secret underground room only managed to gain such an environment thanks to the ancient beast sculpture and the expenditure of a ton of magic crystals. Even then, the secret room could accommodate only several dozen people at a time. On the other hand, Ancient Rock City's City Lord's Mansion possessed an even better environment and could allow more than 10,000 players to train in this environment simultaneously. When Feng arrived inside the core control room, he saw a fully open set of pitch-black doors. The evil god's secret land's mana continuously flowed out of the open doors and into the City Lord's Mansion. The secret land itself had also undergone significant changes. Previously, the evil god's secret land prevented all outsiders from approaching. Now there was a flight of stairs with 49 steps leading into the secret land. These steps tested players on their ability to stabilize their surroundings. The higher one climbed on this staircase, the higher the requirement would become. By the time players reached the top, they would have gained basic mastery over the various elements of mana. Another staircase from the control room's second floor led directly into the evil god's secret land. However, players needed to be at least level 150 Tier 4 to use this entry method. They also had to pay 1,000 mana stones per player to enter. In other words, there were 2 methods to enter the evil god's secret land. One method was free but required players to have basic mastery over the various elements of mana. The other method had much more lenient entry requirements, but players had to pay 1,000 mana stones. This method was a huge benefit for Tier 4 players. After all, Tier 4 players could obtain significant help in their Tier 5 promotion from a level 150+ God Mode secret land. Not to mention monsters inside a God Mode secret land were filthy rich. According to the rumors Feng had heard, the mythic monsters inside level 150+ God Mode secret lands provided at least 5 times more EXP and 3 times better loot than mythic monsters in the outside world. They were walking treasure troves. Of course, securing these walking treasure troves wouldn't be easy either. This was because even the weakest monster inside these secret lands rivaled Refinement Realm experts in combat standards, with the more powerful ones on par with Void Realm experts. And worse, all of these monsters moved in groups. If an ordinary Tier 4 expert entered a God Mode secret land by themselves, they wouldn't even know how they died. And while Tier 5 players could survive in a God Mode secret land by themselves, they would still die if they came across a Tier 5 legendary monster. All legendary monsters in a God Mode secret land possessed combat standards rivaling peak experts at the very minimum, as well as powerful basic attributes. The average Tier 5 player would have difficulty facing a legendary monster by themselves. Normally, raiding a legendary monster would need 3 Tier 5 players. Moreover, these 3 players needed to fill the roles of MT, healer, and damage dealer. Only with all 3 roles filled would they have a chance at killing a legendary monster. If players wished to guarantee a kill on a legendary monster, they would need to add 2 more Tier 5 damage dealers to their party formation. Feng felt a little tempted as he looked at the evil god's secret land's entrance. This was because the monsters inside level 150+ God Mode secret lands had a chance of dropping god crystals, materials essential to upgrading many fragmented legendary items, as well as Tier 5 skill and spell books, which all Tier 5 players needed to raise their combat power. However, Feng quickly calmed himself. He knew full well that he couldn't take on a level 150+ God Mode secret land by himself. Even if he brought Fire Dance and the others with him, they could, at best, Kill a bunch of Tier 4 superior mythic monsters. A Tier 5 legendary monster was out of the question. Afterward, Feng spent 300,000 magic crystals to activate the control room's core magic array, which created a barrier of divine runes around ancient rock city. The city's defensive magic array was significantly stronger than before. With the core magic array's activation, ancient rock city woke up like a slumbering beast. The city drew all mana within a 20,000-yard radius toward itself, depleting the mana in the vicinity. Now, only Tier 3 players who had activated their mana bodies could survive in the surroundings, and Tier 4 players in the area saw their flight speed plummeting. If a Tier 5 existence attacked ancient rock city now, they would also find the power of their attacks diminished by a significant margin. Inside the city lord's mansion, Feng was dumbfounded by the sight before him. What a powerful core magic array. Initially, he had thought to strengthen ancient rock city's core magic array using the 12-array magic world. However, he dared not interfere with it now. This was because countless divine runes made up the core magic array. He could tell at a glance that it was no ordinary core magic array, and even the slightest of modifications could have catastrophic consequences. Meanwhile, with this core magic array, ancient rock city's defensive standard was probably close to that of Zero Wing City, which had the protection of a world mirror. And this was when the core magic array was operating in normal mode, not at maximum capacity. After activating the core magic array, Feng contacted Fire Dance and had her begin transferring the manpower gathered in Silverwing City to ancient rock city. In less than 20 minutes, over 200,000 Tier 3 members and over 30 Tier 4 members from Zero Wing arrived at ancient rock city's empty streets. As an added precaution, Fire Dance also mobilized 3 Crimson Dragon flying ships, 6 Tier 4 Fine Gold Guards, and 2 Tier 4 Dark Gold Guards. The assembled combat power in ancient rock city could already rival that in the various superpowers headquarters. After reading an update from her subordinate, Fire Dance asked Feng, "Guild leader, we've completed the basic setup. Should we open ancient rock city now?" "Open it," Feng replied without hesitation. "Set the entrance fee to 1 magic crystal or 40 silver coins." Only after a guild city had opened its doors to the public could it recruit NPC soldiers and strengthen its defenses at a much faster rate. Moreover, if Zero Wing wished to keep ancient rock city operating normally, it would have to spend at least 100,000 magic crystals per day. If the guild tried to operate the city privately, it would eventually run out of magic crystals. When ancient rock city opened, many scouts from guilds and adventurer teams flooded in. Adventurer teams that made a living from raiding the orc capital city even entered the city in full despite the high entrance fee. The orc capital city was a huge treasure trove. Moreover, all players raiding the orc capital city were frontline experts in the current god's domain. Even the weakest among them possessed peak Tier 3 combat power. Currently, these players could reap a significant harvest just by farming the monsters in the orc capital city's outer and inner regions. With luck, they could even get their hands on level 150 epic equipment. Meanwhile, as ancient rock city was the closest guild city to the orc capital city, it was only natural these players would choose it as their base of operations even if they had to pay an exorbitant entrance fee. Over 600,000 players flooded into ancient rock city in less than 2 hours, and every one of these players was a Tier 3 expert. Upon entering ancient rock city, all of these experts were stunned by the city's splendorous view and wonderful environment. Not only could they recover from the corrosion of foreign energies extremely quickly here, but they could even store up to 2 whole levels worth of the double EXP buff just by resting in the city. The accumulation rate for the buff was even a staggering 30% per 24 hours. While 30% might not seem like much, Tier 3 players couldn't even earn 30% worth of EXP by grinding non-stop for 24 hours. Players who had reached level 140 would be considered grinding freaks if they could gain even 20% per day. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, by resting on the streets of ancient rock city, not only could players avoid delaying their leveling progress, but they could even level up faster than normal. The effect would be even better if they rested in hotels. News regarding ancient rock city spread throughout the entire eastern continent. When the superpowers that were planning on attacking ancient rock city heard about the city's defensive standard, they gnashed their teeth and abandoned their notions. Now they had no choice but to wait for the outer world forces to take revenge for them. While the vast number of Tier 3 experts were exclaiming over ancient rock city's environment, Feng brought Beast Emperor to Starmoon City's War God's Temple. Previously, because the system prevented Feng from leaving ancient rock city's vicinity, he could only imprison Beast Emperor temporarily. Now that he had settled ancient rock city's matters, he naturally couldn't spare Beast Emperor. Not to mention because the War God's Temple abhorred the Evil God's Temple, it offered extremely generous bounties for the capture of high-ranking Evil God envoys like Beast Emperor. After Feng entered the War God's Temple's lobby with Beast Emperor in tow, a level 180 senior administrator promptly approached him. "Greetings, sir. You are here to collect a bounty, right? Please follow me. The Temple Lord is currently present in the War God's Hall," the level 180 Tier 3 senior administrator said respectfully as he looked at Feng. "Okay, lead the way." Feng nodded. Chapter 2890 War God's Temple's Reward. War God's Temple, War God's Hall. In a hall enveloped by starlight, a middle-aged man wearing a white divine robe and a turquoise crown sat on a throne made entirely of 7 luminaries crystals. The man slowly opened his eyes when he sensed the arrival of Feng and the senior administrator. After reaching the middle of the hall, the senior administrator reported respectfully, "Lord Temple Lord, this person is here to claim the bounty on an evil god envoy." The robed man took a closer look at Feng and the restricted Beast Emperor upon hearing the senior administrator's words. He then nodded and said, "Administrator Roa, you may take your leave." Normally, a lofty temple lord wouldn't need to handle the bounty of an evil god envoy. However, Feng was a Tier 5 individual, an existence standing at Starmoon Kingdom's apex. Hence, even the temple lord had to treat this matter with care. Feng likewise curiously scrutinized the temple lord. Starmoon City's War God's Temple was the headquarters for the War God's Temple's branches in Starmoon Kingdom. Meanwhile, Howard Ragewind, the temple lord of this branch headquarters, also happened to be the War God's Temple's strongest combatant stationed in Starmoon Kingdom. After taking a look at Howard Ragewind, Feng had to admit that the War God's Temple deserved to be called the strongest force in God's domain. This was because even the temple lord of a kingdom's branch headquarters was a level 200 Tier 4 NPC. A half-step Tier 5 NPC to be precise. Not only did Howard Ragewind possess an incredibly high life rating, but his mastery over the various elements was also considerable. He was only a short distance from creating his Tier 5 mana body and getting promoted to Tier 5. Moreover, the staff and crown Howard Ragewind owned were both legendary items. Even an actual Tier 5 existence would struggle against him. Looking at Feng, Howard Ragewind asked, "Lord Sword Saint, may I verify that evil god envoy?" "Certainly." Feng waved his hand. Beast Emperor's body immediately flew toward the temple lord. However, because Beast Emperor had forcibly logged out of the game already, his body was merely an empty shell. After Beast Emperor's soulless body arrived in front of Howard Ragewind, its restraints disappeared. Simultaneously, the magic arrays set up around the hall activated and bound Beast Emperor's body with golden chains covered with divine runes. Even if Beast Emperor were a Tier 5 player, he wouldn't be able to break these divine chains. "You are amazing, Lord Sword Saint. You actually caught an evil god envoy. This is a subordinate the evil god has spent much to nurture. Now that you've captured one, the continent will be in peace for quite some time," Howard Ragewind said, his eyes glowing with joy when he finished inspecting Beast Emperor's body. The evil god was incapable of descending onto the main continent. At most, he could only plague the continent through the legacies he left on the continent. Meanwhile, people who had acquired and utilized the evil god's legacies were known as evil god envoys. Compared to evil god apostles, the capture of an evil god envoy was many times more valuable. This was because only evil god envoys could use the power of the evil god's legacies. There was a limited number of evil god legacies on the continent, so the loss of an envoy meant the disappearance of one evil god legacy. "You overpraise me, Lord Temple Lord," Feng said calmly. Feng had long since known that Beast Emperor was an evil god's envoy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have visited the War God's Temple in such a hurry. Afterward, Howard Ragewind chanted an incantation, and Beast Emperor's body gradually disintegrated under the power of the golden chains. When Beast Emperor's physical body disappeared, Feng saw a translucent soul appear in its place. However, under the magic array's effects, the translucent soul also dissipated quickly. The entire process lasted no more than 20 seconds. When Howard Ragewind stopped chanting, Beast Emperor's existence had been expunged from God's domain. Beast Emperor would have to start from scratch if he wished to enter God's domain again. Meanwhile, without the evil god's legacy, Beast Emperor would pose no threat to Zero Wing. He might even have problems reaching Tier 4. After Beast Emperor disappeared, Feng received a notification from the system. Congratulations. You have captured an evil god envoy. Rewarding 100,000 War Gods Temple Merit Points, 3,000 War Gods Temple Reputation Points, 5 levels and 50 Legacy Skill Points. Your War Gods Temple Reputation has reached 6,700 points. Rewarding War Gods Envoy title. You will enjoy status and authority equivalent to a War Gods Temple Elder with this title. Feng was stunned when he saw the rewards. Although he had expected a generous reward, he never dreamed it would be this generous. Setting aside how many items he could exchange from the War God's treasury with 100,000 merit points, just the War God Envoy title more than justified his efforts. While the War God's temple had countless branches across God's domain, it had a limited number of elders. The status of elder exceeded even that of branch temple lords in the War God's temple. With this status, Feng could directly recommend Zero Wing be one of the top 10 rookie guilds of God's domain. Zero Wing would no longer have to go through the coming year's selection competition. Instead, it could directly participate in the competition for the 12 reserve seats. Moreover, God's domain's top 10 rookie guilds also got to enjoy a portion of the 12 reserve seats authority, including having a guild garrison a kingdom and enjoy the worship of this kingdom. Seeing Feng in deep thought, Howard Ragewind approached him and said respectfully, Lord Sword Saint, because of your contributions, you are now the War God's Temple's envoy. If you encounter any trouble in the future or need help with something, I will be more than happy to help. That's great. Upon hearing the Temple Lord's offer, Feng asked, I wish to recommend my guild as a candidate for the top 10 rookie guilds. I also wish to have my guild garrison Star Moon Kingdom. May I know what I need to do to accomplish this? This was his first time enjoying an elder's privileges in the War God's Temple, so he had no clue how to recommend a guild become a top 10 rookie guild. Howard Ragewind was undoubtedly the perfect candidate to answer this question. This is simple. All you need to do is write a recommendation letter, and I'll pass it on to the main headquarters elders. Afterward, you just need to wait. I believe that news of your guild becoming one of the top 10 rookie guilds will spread across the continent in a few days, Lord Sword Saint, Howard Ragewind replied, smiling. Having your guild garrison Star Moon Kingdom is even easier. I'm good friends with the king. Once the War God's Temple makes its announcement, the king will be more than happy to let your guild garrison Star Moon Kingdom. So long as you give your approval, your guild can become Star Moon Kingdom's representative guild on the same day. I will have to trouble you with that then, Lord Temple Lord, Feng said joyfully. He initially thought he would face a troublesome process. The top 10 rookie guilds enjoyed extraordinary status in God's domain. Although they didn't have the authority to decide the development of an entire country, the benefits of becoming the representative guild of a country were massive. Representative guilds would receive precious resources from their respective countries upon taking the position. And these resources included 7 luminaries crystals and various legendary materials. With luck, a guild might even receive inferior divine artifact-ranked materials. After writing the recommendation letter, Feng went to the temple's core treasury, a place only those at the branch temple lord status or above could enter. Sure enough, it's impossible to exchange for legendary weapons and equipment directly. Feng sighed in disappointment when he scanned the exchange list at the treasury. Although the War God's treasury offered legendary weapons and equipment for exchange, only NPCs could use these items. The weapons and equipment usable by players were limited to the fragmented legendary rank or below. Of course, the divine artifacts that cost over 200,000 merit points were the exception. However, it was practically impossible for anyone to accumulate that many points. At this point, Feng switched to browsing the treasury's materials. When he saw the list of materials, he couldn't help sighing in admiration. After all, the treasury housed over 500,000 legendary materials and 10,000 divine artifact materials. This is a divine power source. Feng was stunned when he read the description of one divine artifact-ranked material. Scorching Eye, Divine Artifact Rank Material, an Eye of Flame naturally formed from a divine power source. The Scorching Eye can be merged with a person's body to improve their life rating significantly. Required merit points. 70,000. Feng had investigated divine power sources on multiple occasions. However, he never managed to find any information on them. He never thought that he would come across one in the War God's Temple. However, he gasped involuntarily when he saw how many merit points the Scorching Eye cost. The average fragmented legendary weapon only cost around 40,000 merit points, yet the Scorching Eye cost 70,000 merit points despite being only a material. For comparison, God crystals, which were also considered materials, only cost 7,000 merit points. There are 4 divine power sources in the War God's treasury, but I can afford only one with my current points. If I exchange for God crystals instead, I would probably have enough to upgrade fragmented legendary equipment to legendary rank already. Feng hesitated over the Scorching Eye. There was no way he could acquire more merit points within a short period. After all, there was no second evil god envoy waiting for him to catch. Meanwhile, the Scorching Eye was the cheapest of the 4 divine power sources available for exchange. The others cost around 80,000 points. If he chose to exchange for enough God crystals to upgrade a piece of fragmented legendary equipment, he wouldn't be able to afford any divine power sources at all. Finally, Feng gritted his teeth and said, "I'll exchange for the Scorching Eye and 4 God crystals." "Please wait for a moment," the receptionist in front of Feng said, smiling before leaving to find the items he chose. Sometime later, the Scorching Eye and 4 God crystals entered his hands. Simultaneously, the merit points he had also plummeted. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. However, Feng did not regret his decision. Based on how few divine power sources the War God's Temple owned, he could tell that these items were incredibly rare and precious. Obtaining even one divine power source in the outside world would already be close to impossible, let alone 2. God crystals, though, were a different story. While God crystals might be rare, Feng still had ways to obtain them. I wonder how much the Light of 2 Worlds will improve. Looking at the fist-sized Scorching Eye in his hand, Feng drew the Light of 2 Worlds. System: Divine Power Source detected. Do you wish to let the Light of 2 Worlds absorb it? Absorb. Chapter 2891. Upgrade to Legendary. The moment Feng chose to have the Light of 2 Worlds absorb the Scorching Eye, the latter transformed into a bundle of flames and merged with the fragmented legendary weapon. The crimson flames made the sword spontaneously ignite, and the cracked divine runes engraved on it began mending. Several seconds later, crimson divine runes lit up all over the sword, followed by a significant increase in the Light of 2 Worlds' aura. What a powerful aura! Feng was astonished as he looked at the weapon in his hand. The aura the Light of 2 Worlds now exuded was more than enough to deter ordinary Tier 4 players from approaching it. A Tier 4 player would need to break through the 100% threshold of their mana body to withstand the devastating power overflowing from the sword. However, compared to the Light of 2 Worlds' external changes, the changes to its statistics were much more remarkable. The upgrade had boosted the basic attributes that the weapon provided by 15%. With the weapon, Feng's strength finally exceeded the 70,000 threshold. Now he was only slightly inferior to level 150 Tier 5 legendary monsters in the strength attribute. In addition, the Light of 2 Worlds' 3 additional skills had been upgraded to Tier 5. World Breaker in particular, could now increase an attack's power up to the Tier 6 basic rank. The skill's cooldown had also decreased from 1 hour to just half an hour. After Feng got over his joy of upgrading the Light of 2 Worlds, he shifted his attention to his Nightwalker's cape. Now that I've upgraded the Light of 2 Worlds, there's no hurry to improve my weapons anymore. However, as a Tier 5, the life-saving skills I have are far too few. I wonder how much the Nightwalker's cape will improve if I upgrade it? Feng took out 3 more God crystals from his bag as he looked at the Nightwalker's cape, completing the 7 God crystals required to repair the fragmented legendary equipment. Initially, he had planned to upgrade the Abyssal Blade to Tier 5 once he had saved up enough God crystals, so he never bothered using the 7 leftover God crystals from the Dragon Trial. However, now that he had upgraded the Light of 2 Worlds, he wasn't in as much of a rush to upgrade the Abyssal Blade. This meant there was no need for him to reserve those remaining God crystals. Instead, he could use them to raise his survivability. After all, Tier 5 players might be powerful but they weren't invincible. It might be fine if he died in a dungeon, but if he died in the outside world he would suffer immense losses. After players reach Tier 5, they wouldn't just lose a level when they died. Their mana bodies would also suffer damage, and a full recovery would take at least 3 or 4 days. Either that or players could spend 7 Luminaries crystals to speed up the recovery process. Because of this significant death penalty, all players would try to raise their survivability as much as possible after reaching Tier 5. System: sufficient God crystals detected. Do you wish to let the Nightwalker's cape absorb them? Absorb. Feng agreed to the prompt without hesitation. The 7 God crystals in Feng's hands gradually disintegrated into 7 streams of light that lingered around the Nightwalker's cape, then merged with the cape's tattered divine runes, repairing them. When the 7 God crystals were gone, the Nightwalker's cape's divine runes suddenly lit up. A layer of black fog then appeared around the ordinary-looking cape, reducing Feng's presence significantly and preventing others from inspecting his information. Now Feng could even erase his presence completely if he wanted to. Apart from the cape's hidden effects, its statistics had also undergone earth-shattering changes. Nightwalker's cape, legendary rank cape, equipment requirement, strength 8,000, agility 5,000 when equipped. All resistances increased by 300%. All damage received reduced by 60%. Strength increased by 150%. Agility increased by 120%. Endurance increased by 120%. Ignore levels plus 80. Movement speed increased by 100%. Attack speed increased by 100%. Reaction speed increased by 100%. Additional passive skill 1 Nightwalker. When the cape is equipped, no information about the player can be examined. Physique improved by 60%. Additional passive skill 2 Divine Speed. Player's starting movement speed increased to 100% of player's maximum movement speed. Additional passive skill 3 Void Walk. Players can freely enter the void and traverse it. Void Walk significantly weakens the oppression exerted by the void. Additional active skill 1 Divine Steps. Summons 36 doppelgangers before a maximum of 36 targets for 5 seconds. Doppelgangers do not possess any attack capabilities and are invulnerable to attacks. Player can switch positions with any doppelganger freely. Maximum cast range of 2,000 yards. Cooldown: 5 minutes. Additional active skill 2 Void Shield. Forms a shield with an HP 10 times the player's maximum HP for 10 minutes. As long as the shield exists, the player's HP recovery speed increased by 500% and movement speed increased by 300%. Damage from Tier 5 sources or below is reduced by 90. And damage from Tier 6 sources is reduced by 60%. Cooldown: 15 minutes. The blacksmith god Bayer crafted this cape for the Tyrant of Destruction. It possesses the power to traverse the void. No wonder they say legendary weapons and equipment grant players the power to transcend tiers. This Nightwalker's cape is simply preposterous. Feng was thunderstruck when he read the Nightwalker's cape's information displayed before him. Although the Nightwalker's cape still couldn't let Tier 5 players stand toe-to-toe with Tier 6 players, it at least provided Tier 5 players with a certain degree of survivability against Tier 6 players. The skill Void Walk was especially excellent for escapes. If Feng escaped into the void, even a Tier 6 player would have difficulty searching for him. After all, even Tier 6 players would be subject to a powerful oppression when traversing the void. If a Tier 4 player were to equip the Nightwalker's cape, their strength would approach that of Tier 5 players. Unless a Tier 5 player could counter the Nightwalker's cape's abilities, or the Tier 4 player in question did something stupid, it would be impossible for a Tier 5 player to kill a Tier 4 player equipped with the Nightwalker's cape. Meanwhile, after upgrading the Nightwalker's cape, Feng's strength attributes skyrocketed once more, hitting the 90,000 mark. Now he had 10,000 more strength than the average level 180 Tier 5 NPC. In terms of basic attributes, he already stood at the peak of Tier 5 existences, inferior only to Tier 5 NPCs wielding legendary weapons. I thought I would have to wait a little longer before I could challenge the evil god's secret land, but now it seems that won't be necessary. Fighting spirit flared in Feng's eyes as he thought about the god mode secret land. An ordinary Tier 5 player would not have the ability to challenge the evil god's secret land. However, with the Nightwalker's cape combined with his above-average basic attributes, He was more than qualified to enter the God Mode secret land. Moreover, he had to raid the secret land no matter what. After all, the wealth it contained surpassed the treasuries of several kingdoms combined. But I'll need to make preparations first before challenging it. Other people in God's domain might be ignorant of the situation inside God Mode secret lands, but not sure Feng. Although he had never entered a God Mode secret land in his previous life, he had heard many stories of Tier 5 players rashly entering a God Mode secret land and meeting an untimely death. A God Mode secret land had an excellent environment rivaling that of ancient times, and the concomitant dangers of ancient times. The poison fogs and extreme weather found inside God Mode secret lands were more than enough to claim a Tier 5 player's life. Hence, before entering a God Mode secret land, the various superpowers would always gather many Master and Grandmaster alchemists to craft magic resistance potions and potions that strengthen the user's physique. These potions were essential for Tier 4 players seeking to enter the secret land. Without these potions they could die at any given moment. After thinking up to this point, Feng contacted Melancholic Smile and had her prepare the necessary potions, particularly Grandmaster potions. The more Grandmaster potions they had, the better. Acquiring Grandmaster potions wasn't difficult for Zero Wing now, as Silent Wonder had recently become a Grandmaster alchemist. Time passed quickly. 2 days after Zero Wing began preparing to raid the evil god's secret land, shock and fear suddenly swept the Eastern Continent's various forces. Just a while ago, the Eastern Continent's various forces received news that a large number of players had emerged from the World Passage. Their numbers were unprecedented, with many Tier 4 players among them. According to the reports of scouts and insider information from Outer World players, more than 20 superpowers had entered God's domain from the Outer World. The Outer World's NPC conquest army had also finished gathering its forces, and this army consisted of NPCs from over 30 kingdoms and 6 empires. One could say that the Outer World's NPC forces were adamant in conquering the Eastern Continent this time. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. This conquest army had already gathered on the other end of the World Passage and was steadily making its way to the Eastern Continent. The advent of the Second War of Worlds was here. In response, the Eastern Continent's native forces began frantically raising their defenses, recruiting experts and increasing their levels. They also banded together, forming a coalition to defend against the Outer World forces. At this time, though, an equally jaw-dropping incident took place in God's domain. Mythology's first Vice Guild leader, Cold Shadow, left Mythology and joined Zero Wing with a large number of experts and resources, becoming one of Zero Wing's Vice Guild leaders. Chapter 2892, All Sides Shaken. Dark Knight Empire, Dark Knight City. Starlink's residence had once been brightly lit and crowded with people. However, after Zero Wing's rise, the number of players visiting Starlink's residence had steadily decreased. Now, apart from guild members, almost nobody visited Starlink's residence. Starlink was now the least prosperous of the Dark Knight Empire's top 4 guilds, not even comparable with first-rate guilds. However, many people had gathered in the residence's top-floor meeting room, including representatives from the various superpowers and executives of many dark guilds. These people were here to discuss how to oppose the increasingly powerful Zero Wing in secret and the Outer World's invasion. Only after everyone present read the report they just received, their complexions turned indescribably ashen. Has Cold Shadow lost her mind? She left Mythology for Zero Wing. Is she not afraid of Mythology's retaliation? Hasn't Cold Shadow always been at loggerheads with Zero Wing? What's up with this situation? It seems Mythology is also stunned by this development. According to the reports I received, Cold Shadow seems to have planned this betrayal with her subordinates long ago. Not only did they annex hundreds of shops simultaneously, but they also exchanged all their GCPs for resources. She took Mythology completely by surprise. Although the importance of Cold Shadow's betrayal was insignificant compared to the Outer World's invasion, the various superpowers present were still shocked and confused by this situation. Mythology was one of the 5 great super guilds. Cold Shadow herself also possessed extraordinary strength and status within the guild. She had a high chance of becoming Mythology's guild leader. With such a bright future ahead of her, there should be no reason for her to leave Mythology. Moreover, Zero Wing was currently in a terrible situation. The guild's ability to facilitate teleportation between the two main continents had made it an eyesore for the native superpowers and also a priority target for the Outer World forces. Now that the Second War of Worlds had begun, everyone was steering clear of Zero Wing. Despite that, Cold Shadow had taken the initiative to join Zero Wing. The various representatives present simply couldn't wrap their heads around this situation. Some of them even suspected Cold Shadow of having a secret relationship with Feng. Otherwise, why would Cold Shadow, a woman with a promising future, join Zero Wing, a guild in a precarious situation? All of you be quiet. Lu Tiandi shouted as the babble in the room reached unbearable levels. Standing up, he said, although Cold Shadow's betrayal has increased Zero Wing's strength substantially, our plans remain unchanged. According to the information I obtained, over 10 Outer World superpowers will lead a portion of the NPC conquest army to the Twin Towers Kingdom and Starmoon Kingdom. To ensure the swift destruction of these two kingdoms, we must get the experts there to leave as quickly as possible. We must also get the players of the neighboring kingdoms and empires to distance themselves from these two kingdoms. Without the help of expert players, the two kingdoms will fall with only their NPCs and Zero Wing to defend them. The various superpowers representatives and the various Dark Guilds executives nodded in agreement with Lu Tiandi's words. Guild leader Lu, rest assured, we will mobilize all available personnel to lure the independent experts of those kingdoms and empires away. We won't let them assist Zero Wing. That's right. We can also commission those experts to join the armies of other kingdoms and empires. I believe those independent experts will be more than happy to do so for an appropriate price. The Twin Towers Kingdom and Starmoon Kingdom will have nobody to help them. In the current era where Zero Wing dominated the Eastern continent, the superpowers and dark guilds hostile to Zero Wing were having an incredibly bad time. Moreover, with Feng defending Zero Wing, even the 5 great superguilds could do nothing against Zero Wing. Nevertheless, Zero Wing couldn't stop them from secretly carrying out small schemes. Players played a significant role in the War of Worlds. This remained true even for Tier 3 players because players could resurrect continuously even after falling in battle. While NPCs could also be resurrected, the process was much more complicated. Moreover, the battlefield spanned far and wide. Even if an individual possessed heaven-defying combat power, they could affect the outcome of only a limited area. Winning the war still required the cooperation of a large number of expert players. In the First War of Worlds, the only reason the Eastern Continent's forces managed to stop the Outer World NPC army's advance was the large number of expert players who had participated in the war. Otherwise, the Eastern Continent would have long since fallen. Hence, the various superpowers and dark guilds present were confident of destroying the two kingdoms serving as Zero Wing's backbone in the upcoming war. While the various superpowers and dark guilds were secretly colluding against Zero Wing, a large number of Tier 4 experts had gathered in the distant Orc Empire's ancient rock city. Looking at the pedestrians coming and going on the main street, the female guardian knight Whitefeather exclaimed, "Vice Guild Leader, this city is absurd. Not only does it have stronger defenses than a royal capital, but the number of Tier 4 NPCs here also surpasses even that of certain imperial capitals." Whitefeather had been living and developing in the Fire Dragon Empire all this time, so she was accustomed to the prosperous and powerful Flame Dragon City. Hence, no guild city had ever managed to catch her eye. However, after arriving at Ancient Rock City, Whitefeather had to acknowledge the city's magnificence. The number of Tier 4 NPCs visiting Ancient Rock City was especially amazing, practically comparable to Flame Dragon cities. Meanwhile, the presence of Tier 4 NPCs would greatly impact a guild city's defensive standard and the fortuitous opportunities available within it. It is indeed well developed. Even Mythology's main headquarters can't compare, Cold Shadow said, nodding in agreement. Originally, she still had some misgivings about her decision to join Zero Wing. However, seeing Ancient Rock City had considerably alleviated her worries. With Ancient Rock City's advantages, the city could repulse the various superpowers' attacks even if Feng were absent. It also wouldn't have any problems fending off Mythology's retaliation. Moreover, given enough time, Ancient Rock City would not only attract a large number of players from the surrounding kingdoms and empires but also acquire increasingly better resources from the Orc capital city. Afterward, so long as the Eastern Continent succeeded in fending off the Outer World's army, It wouldn't be difficult for Zero Wing to become God's domain's strongest guild. Her only concern was that fending off the Outer World's conquest army wouldn't be an easy task. If the defense were mishandled, Zero Wing might even perish in the upcoming war. After thinking up to this point, Cold Shadow couldn't help frowning. She couldn't understand why Feng had suddenly called for Tier 4 members like herself to gather in Ancient Rock City. Now that the Second War of Worlds was imminent, there was a lot of work to be done. It was especially important for them to recruit expert players from the neighboring kingdoms and empires. If they acted slowly, the other superpowers would definitely interfere with their plans. When Cold Shadow and her team of nearly 10 Tier 4 experts entered the City Lord's mansion, they were instantly stunned by the environment inside the building. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Why are the operating principles of mana so clear here? The clarity inside mythology's special secret land doesn't even come close, Whitefeather exclaimed. The special secret land mythology had found and secured after paying a great price had an excellent environment that provided players with greater insight into the operating principles of mana. However, only a limited number of people could enter the secret land at a time, resulting in fierce competition among the guild's many Tier 4 experts and the Tier 3 experts seeking to get promoted to Tier 4. Moreover, even after one clinched a slot, they still needed to fork out a lot of resources to enter the secret land. One had to pay for these resources out of one's own pockets, the total cost of which was enough to make even Tier 4 experts wince. Yet not only did Ancient Rock City's City Lord's mansion's environment surpass that of mythology's special secret land, but there was hardly an entry limit. With the size of the City Lord's mansion, thousands of players could enjoy this wonderful environment simultaneously. If mythology's many Tier 4 experts found out about this, they would probably die of envy. While Cold Shadow and the others were in a daze, Feng, who had been waiting in the City Lord's mansion for some time now, suddenly said, "All right. Now that everyone's here, let's enter the evil god's secret land." Chapter 2893, Natural Holy Land. Entering the secret land at this time? Cold Shadow was stunned when she saw Feng instructing Zero Wing's executives to enter the evil god's secret land's entrance located on the second floor. She couldn't understand what was going through Feng's mind. It wouldn't be long before the Outer World's NPC conquest army launched its invasion of the eastern continent. Meanwhile, even 10 Zero Wings wouldn't be enough to stop the advance of these armies. Zero Wing's top priority should be the recruitment of a large number of expert players to fend off the Outer World's players and NPCs. Otherwise, only annihilation awaited the guild. Even without conducting any investigations, Cold Shadow was certain that the Eastern continent's various superpowers had already begun recruiting expert players themselves. If Zero Wing did not hurry, it would fall behind them. Hence, this was no time for Zero Wing's Tier 4 members to be raiding a secret land. However, when Cold Shadow saw Zero Wing's members entering the secret land one after another, she had no choice but to enter the secret land together with Whitefeather and the others. After all, not only was this the guild leader's arrangement, but the other Zero Wing executives did not voice any objections either. It wouldn't be appropriate for a newcomer like herself to express her views in such a situation. What Cold Shadow didn't know was that Fire Dance and the others had previously reminded Feng of Zero Wing's situation. However, Feng still insisted on carrying out this raid. His insistence on this raid was because he was certain that Apex combatants would play the main role in deciding the upcoming war's outcome. While low-tier expert players could indeed play an important role in wars involving kingdoms, empires, and even entire worlds, they were still significantly weaker than higher-tier players. Several thousand Tier 3 players were no match for one Tier 4 player in a large-scale battle. Similarly, several hundred Tier 4 players couldn't compare with one Tier 5 player. In a situation where the NPC combatants of both worlds were roughly equal, the players' Apex combatants would play a vital role. If the Eastern Continent's player forces lacked sufficiently powerful Apex combatants to influence the battlefield, no amount of Tier 3 players could change the war's outcome. There was no way a bunch of Tier 3 players could defend against Tier 4 and Tier 5 players in the long run. Hence, at this critical moment, Zero Wing needed to increase its Apex combatants. Otherwise, Feng wouldn't have decided to enter the evil god's secret land after preparing potions for just 2 days. After Cold Shadow and the others entered the evil god's secret land, Feng took the other entrance, leaving behind only 4 Tier 4 NPCs to guard the control room. Upon entering the evil god's secret land, a wave of nausea assaulted everyone's brain, and everything around them appeared pitch black. After this situation lasted for 10 seconds, they gradually recovered and they found themselves standing in a primitive forest. What's with this situation? White Feather gaped in shock when she saw the forest around her. She had visited many secret lands before, so she had long since become familiar with them. Even if it was a secret land she had never visited before, she was confident she could cope with whatever situation she came across. However, the sight before her was a first for her. A dark sky enveloped the entire secret land, and only a blood moon served as a faint light source. The trees in the forest were hundreds of meters tall, with some even towering over 1,000 meters. Compared to the trees here, the trees in the outside world were saplings. Players like themselves were practically ants when standing beside these gigantic trees. However, the blood moon and gigantic trees still weren't the most astonishing part about this secret land. Instead, the greatest shock was the monsters here. At a glance, White Feather spotted over 100 level 150+ mythic monsters in the vicinity, outnumbering the entire team. These monsters stood in groups of 10 to 20, and a level 160+ superior mythic monster led each of these groups. The aura these superior mythic monsters radiated was also significantly more powerful than that of superior mythic monsters in the outside world. Evil Blood Soldier, Evil Creature Mythic, Level 153 35 billion Evil Blood Stalker, Evil Creature Superior Mythic, Level 160 80 billion to White Feather's horror. All of these mythic and superior mythic monsters had already noticed the team's presence. However, instead of charging at the team like wild beasts, these monsters stood still and appeared to be observing the team. They would also grunt occasionally. Evidently, these monsters were communicating with each other and were in no hurry to take action. However, amid her horror, White Feather also sensed the evil god's secret land's incredible environment. Even without deliberately focusing her senses, White Feather could tell that the secret land's mana density was incredible. She felt as if she was drinking a mouthful of water with every breath she took. The clarity of the mana's operating principles was also unprecedented, surpassing even that of the City Lord's mansion by a large margin. She even felt that if she could stay here, she could improve her mana body before long. Perhaps she could even try to reach the 115% completion rate, a threshold very few people had reached in mythology. The space here is unique. The suppression it imposes on our bodies is significant, Cold Shadow said, frowning slightly after she tried moving her body. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to fight these monsters under these conditions. The number of mythic monsters was already more than what their team could handle. With their mobility restricted on top of that, there was no way they could survive, let alone enjoy the mana environment here and improve themselves. Upon hearing Cold Shadow's deduction, Fire Dance tried moving her body as well. She instantly created 3 afterimages around her, her speed so fast that the Tier 4 players could barely keep her in sight. She then nodded and said, "It will indeed be slightly difficult, but it is still within an acceptable range." Still within an acceptable range? White Feather gaped in shock when she saw Fire Dance's ghost-like movements. White Feather had already developed her mana body to the 105% completion rate. However, when she tried moving in this secret land, she felt as if someone had replaced her blood with lead. She couldn't move her body freely, let alone create afterimages like Fire Dance. However, Fire Dance wasn't a unique case. When the other Zero Wing members tried moving, the effects the suppression from the surrounding space had on their mobility and combat power were limited and almost negligible. White Feather and the other Tier 4 experts from mythology were dumbfounded. Even Cold Shadow was astonished. Are they all monsters? It was understandable for Fire Dance to negate the secret land's suppression, as she was the commander of Zero Wing's main force. However, what was up with the others? Cold Shadow herself faced a significant reduction in combat power in this secret land. Yet, Zero Wing's 60+ Tier 4 members fared better than her. In particular, Violet Cloud, Gentle Snow, and Aqua Rose appeared utterly unaffected by the secret land's suppression. Meanwhile, after Feng arrived in the secret land and tried moving his body, he smiled and thought to himself, "This evil god's secret land truly is paradise. The air is filled to the brim with powerful mana. Someone without sufficient control over the elements will face suppression from the space here." But if they stay here for a while, they'll receive great help in developing and creating mana bodies. Originally, Feng had planned to rely on the ancient god's domain's environment to improve Zero Wings members. However, he didn't need to do so anymore. The evil god's secret land was the perfect replacement. Moreover, players wouldn't have to waste time on training. Fighting the monsters in this secret land would more than suffice to let players familiarize themselves with mana's operating principles. This was because players could even sense the operating principles of mana's various elements in the secret land with their bodies. Hence, players simply had to fight and experience the ambient mana's operating principles repeatedly to improve their control over mana's various elements. However, when Feng arrived, the surrounding mythic monsters immediately grew alert. Shortly afterward, a 40-meter-tall evil blood stalker clad in exquisite armor and holding a spear let loose a roar, inciting all of the monsters to charge at Zero Wings members. Damn it! Why are they charging at us all of a sudden? Cold Shadow frowned when she saw the oncoming monsters. Because of the secret land suppression, they might not even be a match for these monsters in a one-on-one situation. Over 100 of these monsters charging at them en masse was an absolute nightmare. Among those present, only Feng could cope with the attacks of multiple mythic and superior mythic monsters simultaneously. However, Feng wasn't an MT but a damage dealer. In front of high-intellect monsters, dealing high damage wouldn't be enough to attract their aggro. Only the mock skills of MTs could forcibly secure the aggro of these monsters. Feng couldn't aggro all of these monsters to himself. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. So they've decided to get rid of everyone else before targeting me? How smart of them. Feng smiled when he saw the evil blood soldiers and stalkers splitting up and targeting different players. Unfortunately, group tactics are useless against me. He immediately unleashed his mana domain and caught the evil blood soldiers and stalkers within it. The instant he did so, Cold Shadow and the others were dumbfounded. This was because Feng was practically a god descending onto the mortal world at this time. Despite the mana domain holding no hostility to them, they still had their breath stifled. As for the oncoming evil blood soldiers and stalkers, Feng's mana domain reduced their mobility by at least 50%. Some evil blood soldiers even had difficulty taking a step. Compared to the time Feng unleashed his mana domain against Saint's Hand's Tier 4 experts, his current mana domain was significantly more powerful. Chapter 2894, Rapid Improvement. This is a real Tier 5. Cold Shadow and her subordinates were all deeply shocked by the strength Feng displayed. The evil beast soldier's basic attributes far surpassed those of the average Tier 4 player. Even Tier 4 players wielding fragmented legendary weapons and had mana bodies developed to the 110% completion rate would have difficulty going up against these mythic monsters. Yet Feng had immobilized the 100+ evil blood soldiers after deploying his mana domain. If this mana domain were used against players, the results would be unimaginable. Cold Shadow and the others had already gotten a solid understanding of how powerful Tier 5 existences were from watching Feng's fight against Beast Emperor and Saint's Hand. But it was only after experiencing Feng's power in person that they understood the terror of Tier 5 existences. When subject to Feng's mana domain, they would be fortunate if they could even move their bodies to launch an attack at him, let alone trade blows with him. Truthfully, this outcome gave even Feng himself a bit of a surprise. He never thought that his mana domain would improve so much after equipping one legendary equipment. If it were before he had upgraded the Nightwalker's cape, his mana domain would reduce the mobility of monsters like the evil blood soldiers by 60% at most. It couldn't have lowered these monsters' combat power by over 70%. I'll keep those 4 stalkers busy. You guys deal with those soldiers. Feng commanded after seeing that the evil blood monsters didn't halt their charge. He then activated Blade Domain, created 4 magic swords and launched them at the 4 evil blood stalkers. Although Blade Domain was only a Tier 4 legacy skill, in Feng's hands, every magic sword carried power close to the Tier 5 advanced standard. Even superior mythic monsters couldn't take such powerful attacks. When the 4 magic swords collided with the evil blood stalkers, they pierced through the monster's armor like a hot knife through butter. The 4 stalkers let loose agonized cries on the spot, and a damage value nearing 300 million appeared above each of their heads. Their HP bars also fell by a visible chunk. Apart from dealing significant damage, Feng's attacks had also inflicted serious injuries to the 4 stalkers, further reducing the superior mythic monster's combat power. Upon seeing this, the nearby evil blood soldiers shuddered involuntarily. If this weren't a secret land but a forest in the outside world, they would have most likely turned tail and fled already. This scene stunned Cold Shadow and the others. Given this ability to inflict such frightening damage, Feng could easily kill all of the evil blood monsters present by himself. After Feng pinned down the 4 evil blood stalkers, he shouted, "It's your turn now." Fire Dance and the others immediately split up and charged at the slowly advancing evil blood soldiers. The members of Cold Shadow's group also snapped out of their daze and went into action. However, instead of tackling the evil blood soldiers in groups, everyone found a specific evil blood soldier to take on alone. Everyone knew that Feng had created an opportunity for them to familiarize themselves with the evil god's secret land's environment. If they didn't maximize this opportunity, they were unlikely to receive another one later on. After all, they were currently at the secret land's entrance, which was typically the safest place in a secret land. Once they moved deeper into the secret land, they would face more challenging situations and wouldn't necessarily have the leeway to familiarize themselves with the environment then. While Feng could still take control of the situation, they naturally had to make the most of these evil blood monsters. For a time, Zero Wings members fought separate battles in the forest. All of them took on at least one evil blood soldier, while Fire Dance, Gentle Snow, Aqua Rose, Violet Cloud, Xianxia, Elofe and Cold Shadow among others, took on 2 or more evil blood soldiers simultaneously. Everyone placed themselves at the edge of danger to familiarize themselves with the operating principles of mana. Time passed quickly, 4 hours going by in the blink of an eye. Yet even after 4 hours had elapsed, the evil blood soldiers' HPs remained above 99%. They were practically intact. Even the 4 evil blood stalkers Feng fought had hardly lost any HP, all 4 of them retaining more than 80% of their HPs. However, while the evil blood monsters might have sustained barely any damage, all the Tier 4 players had made significant improvements. Initially, everyone's movements when fighting the evil blood soldiers had been awkward. Now their movements were as smooth as flowing water, evidence that they had acclimatized to the ambient mana. However, they still would occasionally feel a sense of disharmony or blockage when using skills, spells, or combat techniques. So, this is how the various elements of mana work. While evading and blocking the attacks of 4 evil blood soldiers, White Feather had an epiphany. Her aura immediately skyrocketed in intensity, and she started having a much easier time dodging the mythic monster's attacks. Her mana body's completion rate had finally reached the 110% threshold. At this moment, White Feather felt as if all the questions she had accumulated before had received answers in one fell swoop, and a burst of power flooded her body. White Feather wasn't the only one to achieve a breakthrough. Many others did so as well. Cold Shadow had successfully pushed her mana body to the 115% completion rate roughly an hour ago. Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose achieved even more astonishing results. Before entering the evil god's secret land, the 2 had already developed their mana bodies to the 115% completion rate. Now they had reached the legendary 120% threshold. They were truly monsters. At this time, Feng even suspected that Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose could get promoted to Tier 5 should they wish. After all, the 2 of them were having too easy a time against the evil blood soldiers. Their grasp of the operating principles of mana had reached perfection. They were entirely capable of creating their Tier 5 mana bodies. After Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose was Violet Cloud. While she hadn't reached the 120% completion rate yet, she was very close. And after Violet Cloud were Fire Dance, Xianxia and Elofe. While Zero Wings Tier 4 members were frenziedly sparring with the evil blood soldiers, large batches of NPCs came through the world passage one after another. Their arrival terrified the scouts the various superpowers had sent to monitor the world passage. It's over. It's over. Why are there so many Tier 4 NPCs? When the Tier 4 assassins saw the NPC army emerging from the world passage, despair filled their hearts. This was because Tier 4 NPCs composed roughly 1% of the NPC army. In other words, there was one Tier 4 NPC in every 100 NPCs in the army. At this time, the portion of the NPC army that had crossed over to the eastern continent already exceeded 10 million. This meant that more than 100,000 Tier 4 NPCs had crossed over to the Eastern continent. And more NPCs were yet to come. Moreover, the average kingdom had only a little over 1,000 Tier 4 NPCs operating within its borders. Even if hidden Tier 4 NPCs were included, this number would only hover around 2,000 or 3,000. Tier 4 NPCs were not cabbages that one could find anywhere. Nevertheless, the Outer World forces had dispatched 3 times more NPCs than they had previously. During the First War of Worlds, the Eastern continent had lost nearly 20 kingdoms to the Outer World forces. In this upcoming war, even empires wouldn't be safe. After the Eastern continent's various forces received this piece of news, they all fell silent. The Outer World's NPC latest army thoroughly exceeded the various forces' expectations. If they factored in the Outer World's player forces, it wouldn't be impossible for the Outer World forces to conquer the entire Eastern continent. Meanwhile, the threat posed by the Outer World NPC army had the Eastern continent's various player forces frantically recruiting helpers. Many superpowers even contacted the Western continent's player forces. And upon receiving the request for help, the Western continent's player forces agreed without hesitation. After all, once the Outer World forces took over the Eastern continent, their next target would be the sea and the Western continent. For a time, anxiety enveloped both players and NPCs native to the Eastern continent. However, Feng and the others inside the evil god's secret land were wholly unaware of the situation outside. They were still sparring with the evil beast stalkers and soldiers. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. After everyone had sparred for over a dozen hours and resolved most of their problems, Feng gave the command to start culling the evil blood soldiers. The mythic monsters of a god-mode secret land were unquestionably powerful. Even when working together in groups of 20, Fire Dance and the others took over a dozen minutes to kill just one evil blood soldier. If not for Feng's mana domain, they might have taken more than an hour. Feng fared much better. In the time Fire Dance and the others took to kill one evil blood soldier, he had already killed all 4 evil blood stalkers. Due to the 4 evil blood stalkers' deaths, everyone in the team leveled up twice. Even Feng had reached level 157. And after he landed the killing blow that finished off all 4 evil blood stalkers simultaneously, the loot that appeared made Cold Shadow and the others rub their eyes in doubt. Chapter 2895, Treasure Trove-like Secret Land. The loot of the 4 evil blood stalkers rained down from the sky. At a rough glance, the 4 superior mythics had dropped a combined total of over 300 items, including at least 30 epic items and 2 fragmented legendary items. The evil blood stalkers' loot was significantly better than that of the outside world's superior mythics. Even Feng was slightly surprised by this situation. Although he had already expected the God Mode Secret Lands monsters to drop significantly better loot, he was still shocked when he actually saw the loot. Past level 150, epic weapons and equipment would have significantly reduced drop rates. One would be fortunate to get even 2 or 3 pieces of epic equipment from a level 150 plus superior mythic. Nevertheless, the 4 evil blood stalkers had dropped more than 30. Moreover, these were all level 150 plus epic items. However, Feng did not rush to collect the loot. Instead, he joined the others to clear out the evil blood soldiers. Only after fighting for close to an hour did the team finish off the 100 plus evil blood soldiers. Although the deaths of the evil blood soldiers did not raise anyone's level, everyone still saw their experience bar increase by a sizable chunk. Moreover, the total number of epic items the evil blood soldiers dropped was not the slightest bit lower than that of the evil blood stalkers. Guild leader, I found some epic weapons and equipment. They can all be used up to level 180. Moreover, one of them is even part of level 180 epic set equipment. Cola said excitedly as he ran up to Feng while waving a plate armor glove in his hand. Feng was slightly surprised when he saw the glove Cola held. The 8-piece level 180 Saint's Heart set? Level 180 epic sets were rare in God's domain, and 8-piece sets were even rarer, rivaling fragmented legendary items. Typically, even the guild leaders of large guilds would have difficulty getting themselves an 8-piece set. However, so long as one completed a set, the basic attributes they received from the set would be only slightly inferior to equipping 8 discrete pieces of fragmented legendary equipment. The set could be used up to level 200 without any problems. It wasn't an exaggeration to call an 8-piece level 180 epic set equipment a graduation set in God's domain. In his previous life, Feng had owned only a 6-piece set of level 180 epic set equipment. An 8-piece set had been something he could only dream of owning. Rather than trying to get an 8-piece set, it had been more realistic to try to obtain 1 or 2 fragmented legendary items. He never thought that these evil blood monsters would drop 8-piece level 180 epic sets. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. A complete set would be the best set equipment available in the current God's domain. It could let an ordinary Tier 4 player gain Tier 5 combat power. Unless a real Tier 5 player appeared, this Tier 4 player would be invincible. Shortly afterward, Xianxia also picked up a part for an 8-piece set of level 180 set equipment. However, this wasn't for the Saint's Heart set but for the Spirit Abyss set, a cloth armor set. Moreover, this wasn't the only piece their team got for that set. Violet Cloud also found one. When all of the loot had been tallied, everyone couldn't help their excitement. They had obtained 71 level 180 epic weapons and equipment, including 5 pieces for 8-piece level 180 sets. 1 for the Saint's Heart set, 2 for the Spirit Abyss set, and 2 for the Magic Dragon set of leather armor. They also had 2 fragmented legendary items. One of them was a shield called Wind's Protection, and the other was a ring called the Spectral Ring. Most importantly, there was also 1 God Crystal among the loot. Upon seeing the evil blood monsters loot Cold Shadow and the others were exhilarated. Although current superpowers had already acquired a substantial number of fragmented legendary items, with some powerful super guilds having up to 30, these were still far from enough to sate demand. With how many experts there were in a superpower, even core executives would be fortunate to obtain 1 fragmented legendary item. Moreover, the drop rate of fragmented legendary items did not increase along with the level of players. Players had only so many sources of fragmented legendary items. The God Crystal, on the other hand, was crucial for the upgrade of many fragmented legendary items, and practically all superpowers sought to obtain a God Crystal. Unfortunately, nobody knew of any reliable sources of God Crystals. After Feng took a look at the 2 fragmented legendary items, he said, "White Feather will take the Wind's Protection. The Spectral Ring is suitable for assassins, so Fire Dance will take it. The GCPs for these 2 items will be gradually deducted from you 2 afterward. Does anyone have a problem with that?" Upon hearing Feng's decision, White Feather hurriedly tried to reject his offer, saying, "Guild Leader Black Flame, I'm just a newcomer. Isn't it inappropriate to let me have this shield?" She would be lying if she said she didn't want the Wind's Protection. However, fragmented legendary items served as a guild's foundation. They would normally be passed to the most trustworthy members of the guild. Meanwhile, she had joined Zero Wing just recently. If she were to receive a fragmented legendary shield out of the blue, many people within the guild would surely have opinions about it. When White Feather tried to refuse the shield, Fire Dance said, "Little Sister White, you should take it. The guild leader naturally has his reasons for assigning the shield to you. Moreover, it's just a fragmented legendary shield. The other Tier 4 MTs in our team already have one. If you don't use this one, it'll just end up in the warehouse. Rather than let it collect dust, we would be better off increasing our team's combat power." Kola, Yi Wumian and Turtledove nodded in agreement. Only 4 MTs were participating in this raid, and White Feather was one of them. If she didn't have a fragmented legendary shield, she would be in for a tough time later. Seeing that none of the 3 other MTs objected to Feng's and Fire Dance's words, White Feather decided to accept the shield. Although she didn't voice her feelings, the sense of belonging she felt for Zero Wing increased significantly. She also secretly admired Zero Wing's generosity. Following this, Zero Wing's members continued exploring the evil god's secret land after an hour's rest. The team encountered many ambushes throughout the expedition, with some ambush parties having more than 200 evil blood soldiers. The combat tactics these evil blood monsters employed also became increasingly subtle. Initially, they only blindly charged at Zero Wing's members. Afterward, they began launching sneak attacks and relying on healers in combat. At one point, they even set traps for Feng, incapacitating him for short periods. Fortunately, thanks to Feng's presence, Zero Wing's team never suffered a catastrophic loss. After every battle, the dead were resurrected, and the team's combat power returned to peak condition. The team fought in the evil god's secret land for 4 consecutive days. Apart from logging off to rest and receive updates on the outside world situation, Everyone spent the rest of their time exploring the secret land until they reached the inner region. By the time the team arrived in the inner region, everyone was at least level 165 already. Feng had even reached level 167. Their leveling speed was astonishing even for Tier 4 and Tier 5 players. Past level 150, every level up required an astronomical amount of EXP. Tier 4 players would be fortunate if they could gain a level a day. Yet, Zero Wings members had gained over 10 levels in the past 4 days. However, compared to their levels, what excited everyone more were the weapons and equipment they got. At this point, everyone in the team had already replaced their old items with level 180 epic weapons and equipment. The team had also obtained a total of 45 fragmented legendary items. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Even Feng was astonished by this harvest. He never thought that a level 150+ God mode secret land would be such an amazing place. It was no wonder the various superpowers in the past had been so desperate to enter these secret lands. In addition to this harvest, the team had also completed 6 8-piece level 180 epic sets, 1 Saint's Heart set, 3 Spirit Abyss sets and 2 Magic Dragon sets. The sight of these sets rendered Cold Shadow and her subordinates utterly speechless. In the current God's domain, level 150 epic sets obtained by players numbered less than a handful, let alone level 180 epic sets. After some deliberation, Feng had decided to give the Saint's Heart set to Gentle Snow, the Spirit Abyss sets to Aqua Rose, Violet Cloud and Elo Fei, and the Magic Dragon sets to Fire Dance and Yen Tianxing. Upon equipping these sets, the 6 players saw their combat power skyrocket. Now their basic attributes were only second to Feng's. Gentle Snow in particular had her strength attribute near the 70,000 mark, surpassing even ordinary level 150 Tier 5 NPCs. Lastly, Feng had given the 24 God crystals they acquired during these past 4 days to Gentle Snow, Aqua Rose, and Fire Dance to upgrade their fragmented legendary equipment to legendary rank. Even Cold Shadow's eyes had grown bloodshot at this sight, envy filling her heart. At this time, Fire Dance, who was scouting ahead of the team, suddenly reported through the team chat, "Guild leader, I found a primordial ruin." Chapter 2896, Primordial Ruin. A primordial ruin? Feng's interest was piqued when he heard the words, primordial ruin. Ruins were commonly found in secret lands, and they could be differentiated into ancient ruins and primordial ruins, depending on their era of creation. Of the two, primordial ruins were much rarer because they predated ancient ruins and the ancient era's residents had already explored and dismantled many of them. Primordial ruins that managed to last until the modern era were as rare as legendary items. Meanwhile, the primordial era was a time when gods flourished and ancient gods still wandered the land. With luck, one might even come across an item left behind by an ancient god inside a primordial ruin. "Where are you?" Feng asked through the team chat. "A canyon stream in the south. There are many evil blood soldiers wandering here, probably more than 3,000. They seem to be guarding that primordial ruin," Fire Dance reported quietly as she observed the patrolling evil blood soldiers around her. "I also saw quite a few level 160+ superior mythic ranked evil blood priests walk into the ruin just now. I suspect they'll conduct some kind of ritual inside. However, the place is heavily guarded, so it'll be difficult for us to sneak into the ruin. The only way we can enter is by breaking through from the front." Over 3,000 evil blood soldiers? Feng frowned. If their opponents consisted of only several hundred evil blood soldiers, their team could still secure victory under his leadership. However, 3,000 evil blood soldiers was a number even he couldn't stop. Not to mention there were bound to be many superior mythics as well. Even if he could withstand their assault, the others on his team couldn't. After all, these evil blood monsters weren't idiots. If all 3,000 evil blood soldiers used their Tier 4 skills simultaneously, even Feng wouldn't dare take them head-on. He would have to evade their attacks and kite them. After all, a Tier 5 player would still take significant damage if a Tier 4 mythic monster's attack struck him. Naturally, it would be even more impossible for Tier 4 players to dodge and block so many Tier 4 skills. It wouldn't matter even if a Tier 4 player were at the world creation standard. This was because mythic monsters could keep up with the speed of Tier 4 players, and thus could precisely aim and time their attacks. Let alone hundreds or thousands, Just a few dozen evil blood soldiers working together would be more than enough to take down a Tier 4 metric tons at the world creation standard. A team would need at least 3 or 4 Tier 5 players to take on 3,000 mythic-ranked evil blood soldiers adequately. Relying only on one Tier 5 player and several dozen Tier 4 players was simply impossible. Such a team would have to expend all its efforts just dodging and blocking the Tier 4 skills and spells of the mythic monsters. In other words, while Zero Wings' team could defend itself against the army of evil blood monsters, it had no chance of defeating the army. Guild leader, how about we take them on in batches? Cold Shadow suggested. Those soldiers might be numerous, but they aren't grouped up closely. It'll take some time for all of them to gather at a single point. We can use this time to kill some of them and retreat once their combatants have gathered. With sufficient repetition, those soldiers are bound to fall. After listening to Cold Shadow's suggestion, Feng shook his head and said, "That is one way to do it. However, that assumes that the other side doesn't have any healers. Those evil blood priests are all capable of healing. Moreover, as superior mythics, their healing range should be massive. If I'm not mistaken, the soldiers are patrolling within the healing range of the priests. Once we attack the soldiers, the priests will heal the injured soldiers immediately. Unless we can one-shot those soldiers, there is no way we can outdamage a superior mythic's healing." Cold Shadow fell silent at Feng's words. Choosing to kill the evil blood soldiers or the evil blood priests first didn't matter. Neither was a viable option. The evil blood priests' healing capabilities were simply too powerful. If the team didn't have the strength to kill several evil blood priests instantaneously and simultaneously, they couldn't deal with so many evil blood monsters. "Are we going to give up just like that?" White Feather grew anxious. "That's a primordial ruin we're talking about." Even mythology had never found a primordial ruin. It had only ever explored ancient ruins. Even so, the guild had still reaped significant harvests from those ruins, particularly regarding the improvement of the mana body. Those harvests were the reason mythology's old monsters managed to develop their mana bodies so quickly. Meanwhile, a primordial ruin was far more precious than an ancient ruin. It wouldn't be strange if it contained treasures that could help players reach Tier 5 more easily. After all, primordial ruins dated from the era of the ancient gods. The legacies left behind in these ruins would be far superior to the legacies created during ancient and modern times. "We're not completely out of options." After giving the matter some thought, Feng said, "However, this will be very risky. We might even suffer a team wipe." All secret lands had entrance limits. Depending on a secret land's rank, the entrance limit imposed on players would also differ. In the case of God mode secret lands, players could enter only once every 10 days. If a player team suffered annihilation, they would be resurrected outside the secret land and would have to wait 10 days to re-challenge it. Meanwhile, the team's significant harvest in the evil god's secret land meant they didn't have to risk their lives for a primordial ruin. They could just continue hunting in safer parts of the secret land and raising their strength. Upon hearing Feng's statement, Cold Shadow asked curiously, "Guild leader, how confident are you?" "Roughly 30%, Feng said. "Of course, that's assuming nothing unexpected happens inside the ruin." 30. Cold Shadow did a double take at Feng. This was already a very high success rate considering their opponents consisted of 3,000 plus evil blood soldiers and priests. She then said, "I think we can give it a try. While it would indeed be unfortunate if we failed in our current state, achieving further qualitative improvements in the evil god's secret land would be difficult unless we venture deeper into the inner region. However, there should be plenty of Tier 5 legendary monsters roaming there, and we don't know if we can defeat such a monster. Rather than take our chances against a legendary monster, we might as well risk our lives for a primordial ruin. It'll be a huge jackpot for us if we succeed." Tier 5 legendary monsters weren't easy opponents to defeat even if they had a Tier 5 player on their team, just like how Tier 4 players had great difficulty soloing a Tier 4 mythic monster. Moreover, a fight with a legendary monster inside the evil god's secret land would easily attract more legendary monsters. If 2 legendary monsters appeared, a team wipe was all but guaranteed. Only Feng might escape alive. When Blackie, Cola, and the others heard Cold Shadow's reasoning, they too nodded in agreement. Their team's equipment standard had improved by leaps and bounds already, and further significant improvements would be difficult within a short time. Only 8-piece level 180 epic sets and fragmented legendary items could provide them with such improvements. Upgrading fragmented legendary items into legendary items was also highly dependent on luck, as not every fragmented legendary item needed only god crystals for their upgrade. Not to mention the drop rate of god crystals was completely random. These weren't items that could be obtained on demand. Since you all see no problem with it, let's give it a try then, Feng said when he saw everyone's willingness to risk their lives. Entering the primordial ruin is actually a very straightforward process. I just need someone to attract the evil blood monster's attention. So long as a sufficient number of them get lured away, I will be able to enter the ruin. However, you must also make sure to pin down those lured monsters. Otherwise, if they flood into the ruin after me, I won't be able to do anything. Leave it to us, guild leader. Kola said, confidently patting his chest. If we 4 MTS take turns using our mock skills and life-saving skills, we can keep them busy for 5 minutes without any problem. We magical classes can also use our magic barriers to trap those monsters for some time, Zhao Yueru said, nodding. After hearing everyone's suggestions, Feng nodded and said, "All right, I'll leave it to you. I'll try to explore the ruin as quickly as possible." When Feng finished speaking, Fire Dance, Cold Shadow and Yen Tianqing split up, moving in different directions. The 3 assassins attracted the evil blood soldiers' attention and lured them toward the appointed location. However, after attracting the attention of a certain number of evil blood soldiers, the 3 assassins had to activate their berserk skills and all sorts of life-saving skills to stay alive. Fortunately, they eventually succeeded in luring over 70% of the evil blood soldiers to the appointed location. There, Kola, Yiwumian, Turtledove, and White Feather used their mock skills on the lured evil blood soldiers, forcefully shifting the monsters' aggro to themselves. The 4 MTs then activated their life-saving skills and began kiting and dodging the monsters' attacks. The healers standing in the distance also showered healing spells on the 4 MTs, repeatedly dragging them back from the jaws of death. Once the 4 MTs had the evil blood soldiers pinned down, Feng, who was hiding near the primordial ruin, entered the void and dashed toward the ruin. With the Nightwalker's Cape's ability, Feng could cross several hundred yards with just one step. As if he had activated instantaneous movement several times consecutively, he crossed a distance of several thousand yards in just 2 seconds and arrived at the primordial ruins entrance. And before the evil blood monsters standing guard there could react to his arrival, he had already dashed inside. The instant Feng entered the primordial ruin, the evil blood monsters in the vicinity went into a frenzy and swarmed toward him. The several evil blood priests kneeling inside the ruin's main hall also began chanting incantations and bombarded Feng with Tier 4 curses, one after another. However, now that Feng possessed a piece of legendary equipment, this degree of offensive was nothing to him. He easily evaded the oncoming attacks. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the main hall and entered the tunnel leading underground. Although he came across various magic traps along the way, they were practically non-existent to him as he was a grandmaster magician. In less than a minute, Feng arrived in the primordial ruin's deepest section. The deepest part of the ruin was like an empty void. A majestic ancient temple stood in this void. Despite the corrosion of countless years, the temple still radiated an unbelievably powerful divine might. If Feng had come here before reaching Tier 5, he wouldn't have been able to withstand this divine might. What a powerful temple! If I hadn't upgraded the Nightwalker's Cape to legendary rank, its divine might would have had a significant effect on me. Feng was astonished as he looked at the temple before him. The Nightwalker's Cape didn't just hide his aura. It also functioned to resist the auras of others. It acted as an isolation barrier that prevented the user's aura from interacting with other auras. However, despite the Nightwalker's Cape's isolation effect, the temple's divine might still reduced Feng's mobility by 30%. Even a true Tier 6 god's divine might couldn't compete with this ancient temple's divine might. Apart from ancient gods, there should be no other existence capable of creating such a powerful construct. When Feng arrived in front of the temple, the several hundred evil blood monsters that had been frenziedly chasing him suddenly stopped. They simply stood at a distance and worshipped the temple, none of them showing any intention of approaching it. Feng sighed in relief at this sight. Now all he needed to do was figure out how to enter the ancient temple. However, when Feng entered the temple, What greeted him inside the brightly illuminated hall was the sight of a cloaked, scholarly young man. The youth was piecing together several golden tablets using magic arrays so complex that they gave Feng a headache. The instant Feng laid eyes on this youth, his soul shuddered. "It's you." Feng's eyes filled with disbelief as he looked at the scholarly youth. This was because this youth was none other than the mysterious youth who had caused a huge commotion in Blackwing City and bound his soul using soul chains during the early stages of the game. "Oh, it's you?" The mysterious youth was slightly surprised when he saw Feng behind him. "You actually survived until now even after getting hit by my soul chains? What a surprise. Should I be honored that you remember me?" Feng eyed the mysterious youth cautiously. Back when he encountered the mysterious youth in Blackwing City, he had already thought the NPC was extraordinary, definitely not your average Tier 5 NPC. Otherwise, this mysterious youth couldn't have escaped Blackwing City after causing such a huge scene. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. In fact, Feng still couldn't glean much information from the mysterious youth despite being Tier 5 himself. The only thing he found out from inspecting the mysterious youth was that the latter was also at Tier 5. Moreover, the mysterious youth gave off a weird vibe. Feng felt an inexplicable fear when standing in the youth's presence. "Not bad. Not only are you blessed by this world but you also managed to get promoted to Tier 5 so quickly. You just barely qualify to become my puppet," the mysterious youth said, a delighted smile appearing on his face as he looked at Feng, like a child who had just found a new toy. "Since you took the initiative to come find me, let me liberate you from your suffering." After saying so, the mysterious youth raised his arm and pointed a finger at Feng. A black ball of mana shot toward Feng. In mid-flight, the ball of mana shattered and enveloped the surrounding space in darkness. Tier 5 Curse Dark Wonderland. Chapter 2897. Terrifying Scholar Feng tensed when he saw the mysterious youth's Tier 5 curse activate. He immediately unsheathed the Light of Two Worlds and counterattacked. World Breaker. Suddenly, a blinding beam struck at the endless darkness. The two powers entangled for a moment, neither side gaining an advantage over the other until a second later. Boom. Accompanied by an explosion, an intense shockwave sent Feng stumbling 2 steps back. His HP also instantly fell by over 9 million. Besides reducing Feng's HP by more than 20%, the shockwave also left his entire body trembling. The hand he used to wield the Light of Two Worlds was numb. In contrast, the mysterious youth came out unscathed from the clash. He still stood quietly in his original position. He also maintained the incomparably complex fourfold magic array he was using to manipulate the several golden tablets with his other hand throughout the attack. As expected of an existence daring enough to cause a scene in Blackwing City. He not only cast a Tier 5 curse without chanting but even maintained such a complex magic array while doing so. Feng frowned when he looked at his trembling right arm. This was undoubtedly the most dangerous situation he had ever come across since entering God's domain. Feng had long since known that the mysterious youth was incredibly powerful and that the youth could cast Tier 5 curses without chanting. However, only after facing the youth's Tier 5 curse did he understand just how frightening the mysterious youth was. If Feng hadn't upgraded the Light of Two Worlds, the Tier 5 curse would have killed him just now. Meanwhile, the powerful shockwave from their clash also shattered the space some distance behind the youth, revealing a woman with 8 black wings. Numerous chains bound this woman's body and her HP was below 10%. However, despite being practically at death's door, she radiated an aura that sent shivers down Feng's spine. How is this possible? Feng was dumbfounded when he saw the 8-winged woman. A fallen angel. Moreover, a fallen archangel. A fallen angel of the highest order. Fallen angels possessed life ratings close to those of dragons. Meanwhile, fallen archangels' life ratings surpassed even that of ordinary dragons. They almost rivaled divine dragons. Yet, the mysterious youth had incapacitated a level 180 Tier 5 fallen archangel with one hand. The fallen archangel was even losing HP and gradually approaching death's door. While Feng was in a daze, the mysterious youth also looked with surprise at the Light of Two Worlds Feng wielded. "It seems you are incredibly lucky. You actually got your hands on a weapon lost during the ancient era." Looking at the Light of Two Worlds, the youth evaluated calmly. It's a pity that this light of two worlds is damaged. Otherwise, you might have been able to injure me with its power. Although the mysterious youth's words sounded arrogant, Feng did not think so at all. On the contrary, his mood grew even heavier after hearing the mysterious youth's statement. The mysterious youth could strangle even a Tier 5 fallen archangel to death. Even if the light of two worlds were at its peak, Feng doubted he could injure the mysterious youth. After all, a weapon's performance depended heavily on its user. Feng had only recently reached Tier 5. He didn't even know how to go about getting promoted to Tier 6. Even if he wielded the undamaged light of two worlds, he could, at most, exchange one move against a Tier 6 God-ranked player who didn't possess any legendary weapons and equipment. Moreover, just like the mysterious youth had said, Feng was indeed very lucky. If the mysterious youth weren't focusing a significant portion of his strength on dealing with the fallen archangel guarding the temple's entrance, Feng would have long since died already. However, our little game ends here. I'm busy. I don't have much time to waste on you, so can you please die? The mysterious youth waved his hand in annoyance once more. This time though he also chanted an incantation. Feng sensed the mana around the temple vanishing. Moreover, it wasn't limited to just the mana in this plane of existence. Even the mana in the void was disappearing, making Feng feel stifled. In the meantime, silver magic arrays appeared, one after another before the mysterious youth's hand, layering to create a fourfold magic array. The Tier 5 Curse Spacetime Disintegrator? Feng's complexion darkened like never before when he saw the gradually forming fourfold magic array. There were significant differences even among Tier 5 curses. Dark Wonderland was a Tier 5 intermediate curse, but the Spacetime Disintegrator was a Tier 5 peak curse. This attack could heavily injure even a Tier 6 god if it landed. Die. The mysterious youth gently pushed the fourfold magic array with his free hand. Suddenly, the space in front of Feng began distorting and disintegrating. With the Tier 5 curse's speed and AoE, Feng had no way to dodge or escape it in time. Moreover, even a Tier 5 defensive curse wouldn't have the power to stop this attack. Don't even think of killing me so easily. Looking at the oncoming attack, Feng gritted his teeth and took out the greatest trump card in his bag, the Dragon Summoning Flute. He then injected the 3,000 advanced magic cores he had prepared into the flute. Immediately, space around Feng began distorting as well. 5 gigantic figures flew out of the warp and instantly occupied a significant portion of the space around the ancient temple. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of an explosion, the sight of 5 level 180, Tier 5 dragons entered Feng's eyes. The brief invulnerability Feng received from using the Dragon Summoning Flute had helped him resist the spacetime disintegration, allowing him to survive the ordeal. However, Feng's situation did not change for the better even after the 5 dragons appeared. When the mysterious youth looked at the 5 Tier 5 dragons, his expression remained completely unfazed, as if only 5 harmless lizards had appeared in front of him. He placed no importance whatsoever on their existence. The scholar. This summoner has found a troublesome opponent for us. B. If I knew this would happen, I would never have agreed to the Dragon Summoning Flute's contract. This is a massive loss. The 5 dragons with bodies measuring several hundred meters in length revealed traces of frustration and helplessness in their eyes when they saw the mysterious youth. Their voices also carried hints of dissatisfaction directed at Feng. Meanwhile, after briefly scanning the 5 dragons, the mysterious youth asked calmly, "Are you 5 going to become my enemies? Scholar, how about we talk this out? If you help us fulfill our contract by letting this heaven-blessed individual go, then we won't have to clash," the leading bronze dragon said. The bronze dragon's suggestion completely ignored Feng's will. However, Feng didn't have any opinions on it either. He simply observed the mysterious youth and awaited the latter's decision. Is he one of the 3 existences Phoenix Rain warned me to avoid? As Feng scrutinized the mysterious youth, he faintly understood why Phoenix Rain had given him such a warning. The mysterious youth's strength was simply unbelievable. Feng couldn't even inspect his level. Moreover, even Tier 6 gods would have a headache when facing 5 Tier 5 dragons. Nevertheless, the mysterious youth showed no reaction whatsoever. When the bronze dragon made its suggestion, the mysterious youth remained unchanged. In a calm tone he asked, "Do you think that's possible? You are merely a bunch of ghosts from the past, Yet you dare speak conditions with me? After saying so, the mysterious youth took action. A golden staff appeared in his hands, and Feng's pupils shrank at the sight of this weapon. This was because Feng was incredibly familiar with the golden staff. The world staff. One of God's domain's 10 great legendary weapons. It seems a battle is inevitable, the bronze dragon sighed helplessly. It then looked at Feng and said, once the fight begins, find an opportunity to escape. The 5 of us can't stop him for long. Outside this secret land he cannot act without restraint. So long as you get out, he'll have a much more difficult time dealing with you. After the bronze dragon finished speaking, the 4 other dragons unleashed their auras. All 5 dragons were prepared to duke it out with the mysterious youth. Act without restraint? The bronze dragon's words clued Feng in on the mysterious youth's weakness. The mysterious youth most likely couldn't act freely in the outside world due to certain restrictions. This would also explain why he had fled Blackwing City previously instead of clashing with Xianxia. Logically, with the mysterious youth's strength, he shouldn't fear Xianxia. After all, the mysterious youth remained fearless and still insisted on killing Feng despite facing off against 5 Tier 5 dragons. Yet he had fled Blackwing City back then. However, before Feng could properly process the information, the 5 dragons began clashing with the mysterious youth. The dragons did not hold anything back, utilizing their breath attacks right off the bat. Meanwhile, the mysterious youth waved his staff. A barrier appeared before him, stopping the breath attacks completely. As a result, the 2 sides entered a stalemate. You damnable things. If I wasn't occupied with something important here, do you think you 5 little bastards can stand up against me? The mysterious youth grew dissatisfied when he saw the stalemate. Ignoring the mysterious youth's words, the leading bronze dragon shouted at Feng, "Run now." Although the 5 dragons had pinned down the mysterious youth with their breath attacks, the mysterious youth's barrier was also steadily advancing toward the dragons. He held a clear advantage over the dragons. Do I leave? Feng hesitated as he looked at the mysterious youth and the golden tablets beside him. He had a hunch that if he let the mysterious youth achieve his goal, something very troublesome would happen in the near future. He might even get swept up in this big problem. Despite facing the all-out attacks of 5 Tier 5 dragons, the mysterious youth still split a significant portion of his attention into manipulating the golden tablets to unravel the divine runes wrapped around the fallen archangel. Feng was certain that the fallen archangel had a big secret hidden on her body. Screw it. Gritting his teeth, Feng chose to spend his legacy skill points to learn the Tier 5 legacy skill Returning Blade, the sole Tier 5 Berserk skill available to him. Even after players reached Tier 5 in God's domain, the legacy skill points they earned through leveling up wouldn't be enough to learn even one Tier 5 legacy skill. Typically, they would still need to accumulate more points through quests. Fortunately, Feng had acquired a lot of legacy skill points from handing Beast Emperor over to the War God's Temple. Those, combined with his leftover points, were just enough to learn one Tier 5 legacy skill. Feng had previously chosen not to learn a Tier 5 legacy skill first to have more options in future predicaments. However, he no longer had the luxury of waiting. Immediately after learning Returning Blade, Feng activated the Berserk skill, causing the light of 2 worlds he wielded to vibrate and let out a low hum. Simultaneously, incomparable power flowed into Feng's body, elevating his basic attributes and life rating to a whole other level. The next moment, Feng's strength attribute broke through the 200,000 threshold. His HP also exceeded 100 million. Now, even if he didn't rival Tier 6 God-ranked experts, he was very close already. 30 seconds. I need to foil his plans in 30 seconds. If I fail to do so, I must leave immediately. After taking a look at Returning Blade's description, Feng found that the skill had a 45-second duration and a cooldown of 1 natural day. He estimated that escaping the evil god's secret land within 15 seconds shouldn't be difficult with his current basic attributes. After thinking up to this point, Feng charged straight toward the restricted fallen archangel. Feng didn't have the slightest thought of dealing with the mysterious youth. If even 5 level 180 Tier 5 dragons were helpless against the mysterious youth, then his chances were even less. The only thing he could do in this situation was kill the fallen archangel and foil the mysterious youth's plans. After all, he had long since formed an irreconcilable grudge with the mysterious youth. If he didn't kill the mysterious youth or the mysterious youth did not take the initiative to dissolve the soul chains binding his soul, he would still perish sooner or later, despite being a Tier 5 player. In that case he might as well use this opportunity to weaken the mysterious youth. For all he knew he might even get to live longer. You bastard! The mysterious youth's complexion sank when he saw what Feng was trying to do. Immediately he began chanting an incantation. Tier 5 Curse Dark Space. Numerous pitch-black chains emerged from the space above the temple and shot toward Feng, preventing him from approaching the fallen archangel. Upon seeing the several hundred chains raining down toward him, Feng immediately activated Divine Steps. Suddenly, 36 doppelgangers emerged from Feng's body and dashed toward the fallen archangel from different directions. As these doppelgangers were invulnerable to attacks and Feng could swap positions with any of them at any time, the mysterious youth had a headache dealing with Feng. Catching Feng alone using several hundred chains might be easy, but catching 37 individuals of Feng's caliber was not. In less than 2 seconds, one of Feng's doppelgangers reached the fallen archangel and executed an attack. However, before the doppelganger's attack could connect, several dozen chains immediately bound its body. Afterward, 6 more doppelgangers arrived before the fallen archangel, and the several dozen chains in the vicinity were insufficient to stop all of them. In the end, one of the doppelgangers successfully evaded the chains and executed a ruthless attack on the fallen archangel. The moment the doppelganger's sword was about to connect, Feng, who had been preparing for an attack in the distance, swapped positions with this doppelganger. Second sword Holy Devour. Now that Feng had a life rating and basic attributes close to rivaling Tier 6 God-ranked players, he could perfectly execute Holy Devour. The next moment, scorching flames capable of devouring even space itself enveloped the defenseless fallen archangel. Minus 5,416,541,412. A damage value exceeding 5.4 billion appeared above the fallen archangel's head as she lost more than 2% of her HP. This development ignited some hope in Feng. You little bastard. You've angered me now. A cold gleam flashed in the mysterious youth's eyes as he shook his staff. The barrier he summoned shoved back the 5 dragons' dragon breath completely, and the golden staff he wielded released a blinding radiance. Then the space around the fallen archangel shattered. Countless beams of light shot out of the shattered space and pierced every one of Feng's doppelgangers, leaving an irrecoverable wound on them. If Feng hadn't swapped positions with his distant doppelganger immediately, he would have most likely lost his life to this attack. However, Feng did not stop despite this situation. Without hesitation he used the light of 2 worlds' spatial slash. Feng swung his blade, his attack instantly cutting through the fallen archangel. The attack was so fast that the mysterious youth whom the 5 dragons pinned down failed to stop it. Meanwhile, this attack had reaped nearly 3% of the fallen archangel's HP. That's enough from you. The mysterious youth began chanting another incantation for a defensive curse when he saw the fallen archangel's dwindling HP. Die. Knowing that once the mysterious youth completed his incantation, all hope of success would be lost, Feng immediately executed the strongest move his mana technique had to offer. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. View third sword Holy Annihilation. Holy Annihilation was an unostentatious technique. There was no giant blade of light or a scorching sea of flames. All that could be seen was Feng executing a simple downward slash. However, when this modest slash connected, it plundered all of the fallen archangel's remaining HP. Following the fallen archangel's death, Feng's level skyrocketed, and several hundred items appeared around her corpse. The mysterious youth's eyes turned bloodshot and he went into a frenzy. Feng immediately grabbed a few of the strongest items he saw, swapped positions with his doppelganger again, entered the void and dashed for the temple's exit. Chapter 2898. Mana advances. The instant Feng made for the temple's exit, the mysterious youth took action. Now that the mysterious youth no longer had most of his strength and attention tied up with the fallen archangel, he had recovered to his peak condition. With a wave of his staff he summoned 3 fourfold magic arrays around him. Tier 5 Curse World Severance. Tier 5 Curse Spacetime Seal. Tier 5 Curse Holy Spirit Collapse. Triple Silent Casting. Feng was thunderstruck when he saw the 3 magic arrays. In God's domain, the difficulty of silent casting a spell increased along with the tier of the spell. Even Tier 5 divine mages would have difficulty silent casting one Tier 5 spell, while double silent casting Tier 5 spells was something only the best among Tier 5 magical classes could accomplish. Moreover, this applied only to Tier 5 spells, not Tier 5 curses. Only Tier 6 gods could double silent cast Tier 5 curses. As for triple silent casting Tier 5 curses, Feng had no recollection of anyone ever accomplishing this feat in his previous life. Nevertheless, the mysterious youth had accomplished this feat before Feng could reach the exit. He suddenly found himself immobilized inside the void. In the end, not only was he forced to exit the void, but his mobility was also severely restricted by the surrounding space. A distorted barrier enveloped the entire temple hall. 6 pillars of light then appeared around Feng, forming an intricate magic array that caged him. Afterward, the ground lit up with a divine glow, causing the mana within the affected space to disintegrate rapidly. Just as the mysterious youth was about to obliterate Feng, the 5 dragons simultaneously chanted an incantation in the language of dragons. A 5-colored disk of light formed around Feng, isolating him from the outside world. Boom! When the divine light dissipated, Feng remained perfectly intact. However, the brightness of the disk of light protecting him had dimmed significantly as a result. Evidently, it could withstand only a limited number of attacks from the mysterious youth's Holy Spirit collapse. It wasn't an invincible defensive spell. The mysterious youth glared at the 5 dragons hatefully and said coldly, "A futile struggle. All of you will die here today." After saying so, the mysterious youth waved his staff, and the space within the temple darkened. Countless dark purple chains emerged from the void and instantly bound 3 of the 5 dragons, thoroughly immobilizing them. Only the leading bronze dragon and a fire dragon had managed to evade the chain's initial assault by relying on their skills. Feng had also managed to evade the chains, thanks to his 36 doppelgangers. However, now that chains surrounded the entire hall, he was in a tight spot. With World Severance and Spacetime Seal acting on the hall, even a Tier 6 God-ranked player would have trouble breaking out, let alone a Tier 5 player like Feng. It's all or nothing. Looking at the nearby distorted barrier, Feng gritted his teeth and used the Light of 2 Worlds' second skill, Golden Soul. After he had reached Tier 5, the skill had also undergone a qualitative transformation. Instead of providing a boost to his perception and control of mana, it now upgraded the quality of his soul. Activating the skill would grant him a soul bordering that of Tier 6 gods. However, activating this skill came with risks. When activated at Tier 5, Golden Soul would leave his soul in a weakened state for a short period once the skill's duration ended. A side effect like this would significantly impact a player's performance. This made Golden Soul a skill reserved for last-ditch stands. After Feng activated Golden Soul, his perception of the world around him changed completely. As if he was a 3-dimensional being looking at a 2-dimensional world, he could see everything around him with incredible clarity. The ambient mana also became an extension of his body, and he could freely manipulate it at will. It was much better than when he manipulated it using his mana domain. He had finally reached the level of actually manipulating mana. Immediately, Feng brandished the Light of 2 Worlds at the distorted barrier before him. Third Sword, Holy Annihilation. Compared to the Holy Annihilation Feng executed before, the one he executed now had undergone a heaven-defying transformation. Now even the space around him had become one with his sword. He felt as if he was swinging space itself at the distorted barrier. Boom! The distorted barrier shook violently from Feng's Holy Annihilation. A small crack also appeared on the barrier, although the barrier quickly repaired this damage. Now this is the true Holy Annihilation. I was mistaken when I tried to guide ambient mana using my own mana. Instead, I should have converted the ambient mana into my own mana. Only by doing so can I maximize my attack's power. Feng didn't despair when he saw the distorted barrier repairing itself. On the contrary, excitement burned within him. He finally understood how to progress to the next step of mana manipulation. Initially, he had used his own mana to force ambient mana into doing his bidding, an incredibly crude method of manipulating mana. Afterward, he had learned to guide ambient mana into doing his bidding. While this method had indeed significantly increased the power he could exert, it still wasn't the best method of utilizing ambient mana. Instead, the optimal way of utilizing mana was to convert ambient mana into his own mana. However, accomplishing this feat was easier said than done. Firstly, players needed to have an in-depth understanding of mana's operating principles. Secondly, players' concentration needed to be close to the Tier 6 standard. Only by having a near-solid mental will could players perfectly integrate their mana with the ambient mana. Players needed to have such a powerful concentration that they could project their will beyond their physical bodies and exert it over the mana surrounding them. Thirdly, players needed the ability to multitask to the extreme. The more mana players tried to influence, the more multitasking they had to do. If players wished to improve their ability to integrate and manipulate ambient mana, they had to keep refining their understanding of mana to reduce the mental burden from controlling mana. Meanwhile, after finding a clear path of advancement, Feng began frenziedly executing Holy Annihilation against the distorted barrier. Every time he executed Holy Annihilation, his control over mana also became increasingly smoother. Simultaneously, admiration for the heavenly blue Saint Eliade filled his heart. Holy Annihilation's use of mana far exceeded the basic standard. The basic use of mana only allowed one to create inanimate objects like the mana bridge. However, Eliade's usage allowed her to create living objects. Her technique, Holy Annihilation, basically modified ambient mana into a true extension of the body. If Feng hadn't reached the Grandmaster Magician standard, he would have never understood this concept. After he gained this understanding, every subsequent Holy Annihilation he executed was more powerful than the previous one. By the time he had executed 24 attacks, the colorful disk of light was close to dissipating. Fortunately, he had finally achieved a breakthrough. The next time Feng executed Holy Annihilation, a white light enveloped the world around him. Mana, space, and even the void disappeared. The next moment, a 30-meter-long gash appeared in the previously invincible barrier. The barrier failed to repair the damage and collapsed. So, this is what it feels like to employ the advanced method of using mana? Feng was startled when he saw the barrier generated by World Severance crumble. The attack he just executed had undoubtedly reached the Tier 6 standard, far stronger than even an attack using the Light of Two Worlds' World Breaker. However, after executing this attack, Feng felt his mind stagnate slightly. In his current state, he definitely couldn't execute the complete Holy Annihilation. Unless he upgraded his concentration to the Tier 6 standard, he could only keep this move as a trump card. As the distorted barrier shattered, the mysterious youth finally restricted all 5 dragons. He then sent his remaining chains after Feng. Upon seeing this, Feng promptly activated Void Shield, his last trump card, increasing his movement speed by 300%. Even under the suppression of the mysterious youth's spacetime seal, he still managed to escape from the temple instantly and flee the primordial ruin. However, the mysterious youth did not give up. Several hundred dark purple chains relentlessly tried to hinder Feng's escape. Every collision with a chain inflicted over 10 million damage. If not for Void Shield's protection, he would have died after receiving a few hits. After exiting the primordial ruin, Feng contacted Zero Wings members, who were close to dying to the evil blood monsters, and commanded them to leave the evil god's secret land immediately. If they got caught by the mysterious youth's chains, they couldn't die even if they wanted to. Although everyone was confused by Feng's command, they still obeyed it without hesitation and were out of the evil god's secret land in no time. As for Feng, because the mysterious youth's spacetime seal stopped affecting him after he left the primordial ruin, none of the dark purple chains could do anything to him. In less than 10 seconds he exited the secret land. 2 seconds later, the mysterious youth appeared by the secret land's exit, with an indescribably cold light in his eyes. When the mysterious youth failed to kill Feng, the restrained, leading bronze dragon laughed and said, "Scholar, how pitiful of you. Not only did your many years of planning come to naught, but you even let the cause of your failure escape. So what if he escaped? Do you think I can't do anything to him outside?" The mysterious youth did not get angered by the bronze dragon's words. Sending a calm glance at the bronze dragon, he said, "I will settle his debt with me eventually. So long as he is inside this cage, he will not escape my hands. I will also escape this cage sooner or later." After saying so, the mysterious youth waved his staff and turned the 5 dragons into ash. On the other side, Feng finally arrived back in the City Lord's mansion's control room. After staring at the evil god's secret land's entrance for some time, he breathed out a sigh of relief, thinking to himself, seeing as there's no reaction after all this time, I should be fine now. Feng did not wish to meet the mysterious youth a third time. The mysterious youth's combat power exceeded common sense. If not for the 5 dragons' assistance, Feng would have perished just now. Guild leader, what did you do inside the ruin? How are you level 172 already? Fire Dance asked in confusion after seeing Feng exit the secret land. Feng had only been level 167 when he entered the primordial ruin, yet he was now level 172. He had gained 5 whole levels in a matter of minutes. His leveling speed was out of this world. When Feng took a look at his own level, he too was slightly surprised. He never thought that killing a level 180 tier 5 fallen archangel would grant so much EXP. Not to mention he hadn't killed the fallen archangel by himself. What he had done was basically kill steal, so he hadn't received all of the EXP the fallen archangel granted. Yet he still leveled up 5 times. Through this he could tell just how powerful the fallen archangel was. If he had come across her under normal circumstances, he would have died without a doubt. You killed a level 180 tier 5 fallen archangel? Guild leader, you're not lying to us, right? That's a fallen archangel we're talking about. Everyone was momentarily stunned when they heard Feng's explanation. They couldn't help doubting his words. Fallen archangels were existences rivaling divine dragons. A tier 5 fallen archangel was in existence standing at the apex of the current god's domain. A tier 5 player would be fortunate to escape a tier 5 fallen archangel, let alone kill one. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You of course not. Feng chuckled when he saw the skeptical looks they all gave him. What good would lying to you do? Moreover, I also grabbed some items that fallen archangel dropped. After saying so, Feng took out the 4 items he looted from the fallen archangel. As soon as he did so, the mana in the control room froze, and everyone gasped inadvertently. They all felt their hearts palpitating in fear in the presence of the 4 items, and they stumbled back despite themselves. Meanwhile, after Feng took a look at one of the items he took out of his bag, he too was stunned. Astonishment filled his eyes as he stared at the rainbow-colored crystal ball before him. An ancient god's eye?